Holy shit! One kid flips fate the middle finger and rewrites everything with pure, terrifying power. A kid gets dragged through hell, snaps the damn world in half, and comes back colder than death itself. Power, betrayal, chaos. Everything burns or bows. Stick around, because this story doesn't ask for attention. It demands it.
They say every desert was once an ocean, that somewhere beneath all that sand there used to be life, water, green things growing toward the sun. And then something changed. Something hungry swallowed it all, dried it out, left nothing behind but dust and silence and the bones of things that used to matter. This is that kind of story. This is the story of Naruto Uzumaki, the boy who was supposed to beg for scraps, who was supposed to cry and scream and chase after love that would never come. The boy the village built to be a punching bag. The boy who was supposed to break, he broke, all right, just in the wrong direction. Because when that boy hit the sand, really hit it, face first, dying, burning alone, the sand remembered him. And he remembered the sand. And what came back to Konoha 3 weeks later was wearing a fur-lined coat and a golden hook where his left hand used to be, and the look in his eyes made Anbu captains forget how to breathe. This is the story of how the Desert King was reborn into a world of ninja, and how that world was never, ever the same. He was 7 years old when the Kumogakure operatives breached the village perimeter at 3:14 in the morning. 3 of them, Jonin level, specialists in extraction, grab the target, suppress the Bijou chakra, move fast, leave nothing behind. They'd done their homework. They knew the patrol routes. They knew the ambush shift change happened at 3. They knew the Jinchuriki lived alone in a rundown apartment with a lock that could be picked with a chopstick. What they didn't account for was a 7-year-old who slept with one eye open because the last time he slept deep, someone had thrown a bottle through his window. Naruto felt the hand clamp over his mouth. He smelled iron and sweat. He saw the Kumo headband catch moonlight for half a second before the chloroform cloth pressed against his face. Then everything went sideways. They moved fast, through the forest, past the border of fire country, south, which was wrong because Kumo was north. They were taking the long route, cutting through Wind Country's demon desert to throw off pursuit. 2 days into the desert, the team leader, a man named Toragai, decided the brat was slowing them down. The drug was wearing off. The kid was starting to stir, starting to whimper, and the chakra suppressant seals they'd slapped on him were flickering. The fox inside was restless. "We move faster without him conscious," Toragai said. His partner, the woman with the lightning tattoo running down her forearm, frowned. "We need him alive. He'll be alive, just less aware." The third operative, younger, nervous, already sweating through his vest, said nothing. He just watched the sand dunes ripple in the heat. They hit him again, harder this time, enough to put a grown man under for 8 hours. It put Naruto under for 3. When he woke up, the Kumo team was engaged. Soon a border patrol, 2 Chunin and a sensor, had picked up the anomaly. Foreign chakra signatures in the demon desert. The fight was vicious and fast, and it happened 200 meters from where they dumped the unconscious Jinchuriki behind a dune. Naruto heard the explosions. He heard the screaming. He heard the wind carrying sand like razors across the open waste. He tried to stand. His legs buckled. The suppressant seals were cracking, but his chakra was scrambled, his body dehydrated, his lips split and bleeding. The sun was directly overhead and the temperature was 130 degrees and climbing. He crawled. 10 feet, 20. His hands sank into the sand and the heat burned through his palms, and he kept going because stopping meant dying. And he'd spent 7 years refusing to die just to spite a village that wanted him to. He made it over one dune. Then his arms gave out. He fell face first into the sand, and the sand caught him. It didn't feel like ground. It felt like a hand, like someone had reached up from underneath and cradled his body. The grain shifted around him, warm, alive, humming with something that had nothing to do with wind or weather. Naruto's eyes went wide, and then the memories hit. They came like a flood breaking through a dam. A life, an entire life that wasn't his, but felt more real than anything he'd ever known. A world of oceans and pirates and islands that floated and men who could become fire, become smoke, become rubber, become light. A devil fruit. A power that turned his body into sand itself. Not a jutsu, something older. Something that lived in the cells and the soul and couldn't be taken away. He saw a man, tall, broad-shouldered, scar across his face, a hook where his left hand should be, a fur coat draped over shoulders that had carried the weight of an empire, cigar smoke curling from a grin that had never once been warm. Sir Crocodile, the desert king, warlord of the sea, the man who had schemed and plotted and fought and conquered and lost and been imprisoned and escaped and fought again and never ever stopped. That man's soul poured into Naruto Uzumaki like water into a dry well, except it wasn't water, it was sand. Naruto gasped, his back arched, his fingers dug into the desert floor, and the grains responded, spiraling up his arms, coating his skin, seeping into his pores. His chakra network, already overloaded from the Nine Tails, adapted. The foreign energy merged with the old. The Suna no Mi, the sand fruit, didn't care about dimensions or physics or logic. It cared about the soul, and this soul had earned it twice. Naruto's right hand sank into the sand up to the elbow. He pulled it out and the sand came with it, swirling around his fist like a gauntlet, compressing, hardening, then flowing free. He stood up. The desert didn't feel hot anymore. It felt like home. The laugh came out of his throat like it had always belonged there. He looked at his left hand, flexed the fingers. Then, without hesitation, he reached into the stolen memories and found the answer to a question he hadn't asked yet. A vow. A symbol. A reminder that power costs something and you should be the one who decides the price. He found a broken kunai half buried in the sand. A relic from some long-dead Suna patrol. What happened next would make most people sick. Naruto did it without flinching. One clean strike. The left hand dropped into the sand, and the sand swallowed it, and the blood that followed turned to dust before it could stain anything. He didn't scream. He cauterized the wound with compressed, superheated sand, the grains spinning so fast they generated friction heat that seared the flesh closed. Then he fashioned the replacement, pure crystallized sand, shaped by will, compressed to the density of steel, and given a golden color that caught the desert sun like a crown. A hook. Naruto held it up, watched it gleam, attached it to the stump with more hardened sand that fused to his wrist like it grew there. He was 7 years old, and he had just cut off his own hand and replaced it with a weapon. And he smiled. 2 of the 3 Kumo operatives had survived the skirmish with the Suna patrol. Toragai had taken a wind-style slash across the ribs. The woman with the lightning tattoo was carrying him, moving fast, heading for the extraction point. They didn't realize the kid was awake. They didn't realize the kid was different. They came back for him because the mission demanded it. Because the Raikage wanted the 9 tails, and the Raikage always got what he wanted. The woman rounded the dune first. She saw the boy standing there, standing with his back to her, looking at the sun like it owed him money. She saw the coat. Where did he get a coat? He must have scavenged it from one of the dead Sunachunin. It hung past his knees, heavy fabric, fur-lined collar turned up against the wind. Target acquired, she said into her comm. He's standing, conscious, moving into. Naruto turned around. The woman stopped. His eyes were different. That was the first thing she registered. They were still blue, still the same shade, but there was something behind them now. Something ancient and bottomless and entirely unimpressed with everything it saw. Ah, Naruto said. His voice was too steady for a 7-year-old. Too deep? You're the ones who brought me here. Toragai coughed blood. Grab him, now. Stop playing around. The woman lunged. She was fast. A-rank speed. Lightning release enhancement coursing through her legs, hand outstretched with a chakra suppression seal, ready to slap on his forehead. Her hand passed through his face. Literally through it. His head separated into grains of sand where her palm connected. The grains scattered around her fingers, reformed behind her, and Naruto was standing 2 feet to her left, completely untouched, his expression unchanged. What? She started. Sables. He raised one hand, casually, like he was waving away a fly. The sand around them, all of it, every grain within a 100-foot radius, exploded upward. It didn't swirl gently. It detonated. A localized sandstorm erupted from the earth with the force of 100 explosive tags, whipping horizontal, stripping exposed skin raw, filling lungs, blinding eyes. The woman screamed. She threw up a lightning release barrier, impressive, quick, well-formed. The sand ate through it in 2 seconds. Lightning didn't stop sand. Lightning didn't stop anything that simply didn't care. Toragai was on his knees, one arm shielding his face, blood from his wound mixing with sand. What is this? What kind of jutsu? Jutsu? Naruto's voice cut through the storm. He walked toward Toragai. The sandstorm parted around him like a crowd making way for a king. This isn't a jutsu. He reached down and grabbed Toragai by the face. All 5 fingers, or 4 fingers and a hook, pressed against the man's skin. And then Toragai felt it. The pull. It started at the surface. His skin, the skin under Naruto's palm, began to tighten, like someone had reached inside and started wringing him out. The moisture in his flesh, in his blood, in the thin layer of sweat on his face, all of it began migrating toward the point of contact, toward Naruto's hand. Toragai screamed. His lips went first. They cracked like old leather left in the sun. The splits deepened, dried blood flaking off in dust rather than drops. His cheeks hollowed, actually hollowed, the flesh pulling inward as the water left his cells. His eyes, God, his eyes, they sank into their sockets like stones dropped into a well. The vitreous humor drained and the eyeballs wrinkled like grapes becoming raisins, collapsing inward, the whites going yellow, then brown, then gray. The sound was the worst part, a wet, crackling, sucking noise, like crumpling a water bottle from the inside. Every cell in Toragai's body was being compressed, wrung dry, emptied of everything that made it alive, his muscles seized. Then they shrank. His arms, thick, powerful Jojonin arms that had killed dozens of men, withered into sticks wrapped in paper. His torso caved inward. His rib cage became visible through skin that was now the color and texture of old parchment. His jaw locked open in a scream that no longer had the moisture to produce sound. It took 8 seconds. 8 seconds from living, breathing Jonin to a cracked, gray, mummified husk that weighed maybe 30 pounds and looked like it had been dead for 3,000 years. Naruto dropped it. The body hit the sand and crumbled at the joints. Pieces of what used to be Toragai rolled down the dune like broken pottery. The woman was running. Full sprint. Maximum speed. Lightning chakra blazing through every tendon. Desert Spada. Naruto swept his right hand in a horizontal arc. A blade of compressed sand, 20 feet long, razor-edged, moving faster than a thrown kunai, launched from his palm and cut through the air like a scythe through wheat. It caught her at the waist. The top half went left. The bottom half went right. The sand cauterized both pieces instantly, drying the blood before it could fall. She didn't even scream. She was dead before her brain registered the separation. Naruto stood in the desert. 2 corpses, one in pieces, one in dust. The wind carried sand across his shoulders. His fur coat flapped once, heavy and proud. He lit a cigar. Where did a 7-year-old get a cigar? He'd taken it from Toragai's vest. The man was a smoker. Ironic, all that moisture, and he'd chosen to set things on fire. Naruto inhaled, exhaled. The smoke mixed with the sand haze and drifted south. Water is life, he said to nobody. Then he smiled. That hook glint, cold eye, not a damn thing is funny smile. But sand is eternity. He turned west. Konoha was that direction. A long walk. Weeks through forest and plain and mountain pass. He started walking. The desert didn't try to stop him. It never would again. 3 weeks. That's how long it took. 3 weeks of walking through wilderness that should have killed a 7-year-old twice over. Bandits found him on day 4. 3 of them, roadside thugs who saw a kid alone and saw opportunity. Naruto drained the first one dry without breaking stride. The other 2 ran. He let them. Running men spread the right kind of stories. He ate when he found food. He drank when he found water. He slept when his body demanded it, and his sand formed a cocoon around him that would have taken an explosive tag to crack. By day 10, he'd fashioned his hook into something elegant, golden, gleaming. The crystallized sand was harder than steel and sharper than anything a blacksmith could forge. He wore it with the comfort of a man who'd worn one for decades in another life. By day 15, he'd started planning Baroque works. The name surfaced from memories that felt as natural as breathing. An organization of agents ranked by number, operating in the shadows, pulling strings that moved nations. In the old world, it had been designed to conquer a kingdom. In this world, it would conquer something bigger. The boy walked, and the boy planned, and the sand followed him like a loyal dog. On day 21, the gates of Konoha appeared on the horizon. The guards, two chunin named Izumo and Kotetsu, saw him coming from half a mile away. A small figure in an oversized fur coat, walking with the kind of unhurried confidence that made you check for backup. Is a kid? Kotetsu squinted. Wearing a coat? In this heat? Izumo reached for the alert scroll. The figure got closer, closer, and then the feeling hit them. It was like standing at the edge of a cliff you couldn't see. The air went dry, literally dry, the humidity dropping 20% in a 10-foot radius around the approaching boy. Their lips cracked. The wooden gate post nearest to his path groaned as the moisture in its grain began to pull. Sound the... Izumo started. Don't bother. The boy walked between them. He didn't look up. Tell the Hokage I'm back. He'll want to see this. They recognized the whisker marks, the blonde hair, the blue eyes. They didn't recognize anything else. That's Naruto? Kotetsu whispered. That's something, Izumo said. I'm calling Anbu. Naruto walked through the village like he owned it. People stared. Vendors stopped mid-transaction. Children pointed. Mothers pulled their kids closer. The usual hostility was there, but underneath it something new was growing. Fear. The adults couldn't place it. He was just a kid, just the demon brat in a weird coat. But something in the back of their skulls, the ancient lizard brain part that knew when a predator was nearby, was screaming at them to look away and keep walking. A drunk outside a bar spit toward him. Old habit. The saliva hit Naruto's shoulder and passed through it. The sand there separated, let the spit fall to the ground, and reformed seamless. The drunk blinked, looked at his bottle, looked at the kid, decided he was done drinking for the day. Naruto arrived at the Hokage Tower 17 minutes after passing through the gate. The Anbu were already there. 3 of them, perched on rooftops, tracking him with weapons drawn. Hiruzen Sarutobi was standing at his window. He'd felt it the moment Naruto crossed the border. Something immense, something dry and heavy and old, layered under the familiar burn of the Nine Tails. The boy entered the office without knocking. Anbu Cat moved to intercept. Naruto looked at her. Just looked. Cat stopped. Her hand trembled on her tanto. Hiruzen saw it and felt something cold settle in his stomach. Naruto, the Hokage said, we've been searching for you for 3 weeks. The report said Kumogakure. Kumogakure sent 3 operatives to kidnap the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, Naruto said. He sat down in the chair across from the Hokage's desk without being invited, crossed one leg over the other, rested his hooked left hand on the armrest. They failed. Hiruzen stared at the hook, at the coat, at the cigar tucked behind the boy's ear, at the eyes that looked at him like he was being evaluated. What happened to your hand? Hiruzen asked. I made a decision. What decision requires? The kind that only needs to be made once, Naruto smiled. It was the kind of smile that made Hiruzen think of Orochimaru, but worse. Orochimaru smiled because he enjoyed cruelty. This boy smiled because he was already past it. The Kumo operatives are dead, Hokage-sama. 2 in the Demon Desert. The 3rd fled during the Suna Border Patrol engagement. I'd suggest a strongly worded letter to the Raikage, with the mummified remains of his team leader as the envelope. Mummified? You'll see. Eventually everyone will. Hiruzen leaned forward. Naruto, what happened to you in that desert? The boy lit the cigar, right there in the Hokage's office, took a long drag, let the smoke pool between them. I woke up, he said. That was all Hiruzen got. He tried for another hour. Anbu debriefed the boy, or tried to. Naruto gave them the bare facts: kidnapping, desert, survival, return. He left out the memories. He left out the power. He left out everything that mattered. When they finally released him, Naruto walked back to his apartment. He unlocked the door with a key he'd kept in his pocket through the entire ordeal. Stepped inside, looked at the peeling walls, the dripping faucet, the single futon on the floor. What a dump, he said. And he meant it in a way that included the apartment, the village, and the entire shinobi system. He'd fix that. All of it. But first, infrastructure. That night, Naruto sent out his first sand clone. It moved through the underground of Konoha like a ghost. Through the drainage tunnels, the abandoned route passages, the forgotten bunkers from the Second War. It mapped everything. By morning, he had a complete layout of Konoha's underbelly. Within a month, he'd made contact with 3 information brokers, 2 smugglers, and a retired Anbu operative who'd been discharged for selling mission reports. He didn't threaten them. He didn't even approach them personally. He sent messages written in sand that formed on their desks and tables and pillows, offering partnerships that were too profitable to refuse and too dangerous to betray. Baroque Works began with 5 members. By the time Naruto entered the academy, it had 27. The academy years were interesting. Interesting in the way a lion sitting in a room full of rabbits is interesting. The rabbits know something is off. They just don't know what to do about it. Naruto sat in the back row. Always the back row. Coat draped over his chair, hook resting on the desk, cigar unlit but tucked behind his ear. He never raised his hand. He never answered questions. He scored perfectly on every written exam and refused to participate in physical exercises. Iruka Umino tried to reach him. Because that's what Iruka did. He reached for the unreachable kids, the broken ones, the angry ones. He'd been one himself. Naruto, you need to participate in the sparring exercises, Iruka said after class one day. Your taijutsu scores are blank. Naruto looked at him. I don't spar. It's a graduation requirement. Then change the requirement. I can't just, then fail me. I'll still be here next year, and the year after that. And eventually you'll realize that making me punch other children is a waste of my time and theirs. Iruka opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. What happened to you, Naruto? The other teachers say you used to be different. I used to be a lot of things. The incident that changed everything at the academy happened on a Wednesday. Kiba Inuzuka was feeling brave. He'd been watching the weird kid in the back with the coat and the hook for months. His dog, Akamaru, whined every time they got close, but Kiba was 12, which meant he was stupid in exactly the way 12-year-olds are. Hey, Hook Hand. Kiba was standing in the aisle, arms crossed, grinning. 3 of his friends were behind him. Akamaru was notably absent. The dog had refused to come inside the classroom. Nice coat. You rob a dead guy? Naruto didn't look up. He was reading. A book on economic trade routes in the Land of Fire, the kind of book that no academy student had any business reading. I'm talking to you, freak. I heard you. Then answer. Why? Kiba's grin twitched. The crowd was watching. Sasuke was watching from his corner, one eyebrow raised. Sakura was watching. Shikamaru had opened one eye from his nap. Kiba stepped closer. Because I said so. Naruto closed his book, set it on the desk, looked up at Kiba with those blue eyes that had seen another world and decided this one was beneath it. Then he reached down. His right hand, his real hand, pressed flat against the classroom floor. Palm down. Fingers spread. The effect was immediate. Starting from his palm, spreading outward in a perfect circle, the wooden floor began to change. The color drained first, rich brown fading to gray, then to white, then to the color of bone. The grain tightened. The wood cracked, tiny fractures spreading like spider webs. The moisture in the floorboards was being ripped out, cell by cell, fiber by fiber. The circle expanded. 3 feet, 6 feet, 10. It reached Kiba's feet. Kiba felt it. The bottoms of his sandals went dry and stiff. The leather cracked. He looked down and saw the floor under him turning to dust. Actual dust. Wood so drained of moisture it couldn't hold its own structure. What the hell? Sit down. Naruto's voice was steady. Kiba sat down. He didn't think about it. His legs just folded, and his butt hit the bench, and his mouth closed, and his brain caught up 3 seconds later, asking why he just obeyed a command from the class weirdo, because the floor was still dying. 12 feet out from Naruto's palm now, desks were groaning. Papers were curling at the edges. The potted plant on Iruka's desk withered, leaves going brown, then black, then crumbling to ash. The water in the cup beside it evaporated in a thin wisp of steam. The entire classroom was silent. Hinata Hyuga had her Byakugan activated without realizing it. What she saw made her go pale. The chakra wasn't flowing from Naruto, it was part of him. His entire body, at the cellular level, was chakra and sand intertwined so tightly there was no separation. He wasn't using a technique, he was being one. Shikamaru sat up straight. He looked at the circle of dead, left gray wood on the floor. Looked at Naruto, did the math in his head. His face went slack. Troublesome, he whispered, but his voice was shaking. Sasuke Uchiha stared at Naruto for 31 seconds without blinking. His Sharingan hadn't activated yet. He was still months away from that. But his instincts were screaming. This was power. Real power. The kind that Itachi had. The kind that he'd been chasing since the worst night of his life. And it was sitting in the back of his classroom, reading books about trade routes. Sakura Haruno gripped the edge of her desk. She didn't understand what had just happened. She just knew that she suddenly wanted to be very, very far away from the blonde boy in the coat. Iruka walked in 40 seconds later. He saw the floor. He saw the dead plant. He saw 30 academy students sitting in perfect silence with expressions ranging from terrified to fascinated. He looked at Naruto. Naruto was reading his book again. "What happened here?" Iruka asked. "Kiba tripped," Naruto said, turning a page. "I helped him sit down." Nobody contradicted him. The graduation exam came and went. Naruto passed with the highest written score in the Academy's history and a practical demonstration that consisted of a single technique. A sand clone that was so perfect, so indistinguishable from the original, that the proctors couldn't tell which one was Naruto until he told them. They assigned him to Team 7. Naruto Uzumaki, Sakura Haruno, Sasuke Uchiha. Jonin Sensei, Kakashi Hatake. Naruto received the assignment and laughed. Kuhaha. The Sharingan boy, the civilian girl, and the Jinchuriki walk into a team. Sounds like the setup for a very bad joke. Nobody laughed with him. Team assignments happened in the morning. By afternoon, they were supposed to meet their Jonin Sensei at Training Ground 7. Sakura arrived first, nervous and excited. Sasuke arrived second, brooding and superior. Naruto arrived third, 20 minutes after the scheduled time, and sat on a boulder at the edge of the clearing. He pulled out a cigar, lit it with a spark of friction-heated sand, crossed his legs, waited. Kakashi Hatake arrived 3 hours late. "Yo!" The silver-haired Jonin appeared in a swirl of leaves, one hand raised in a lazy wave, his visible eye curved in a smile. "Sorry I'm late." A black cat crossed my. He stopped, because the boy on the boulder was looking at him, and the air around that boy was wrong, dry, heavy, charged with something that set off every alarm Kakashi had developed in 20 years of combat. Kakashi's eye narrowed behind his mask. He activated his Sharingan, just for a second, just a flicker. What he saw made his blood drop 3 degrees. The boy's chakra network was a desert, literally. Instead of the normal pathways and Tenki points, there was sand, rivers of it, flowing through channels where chakra should be, golden and dense and impossible. And beneath that, deep beneath, buried like a sleeping god, the enormous, rage-red presence of the Nine Tails. But the fox wasn't fighting. It was contained, surrounded on all sides by an ocean of sand that held it in place like chains made of a million grains. "You must be Naruto," Kakashi said. His voice was even, but his hand had moved 1 inch closer to his kunai pouch. Involuntary. "And you must be the man who'll test us with bells." Naruto exhaled smoke. "Let's skip the speech. You have 2 bells. We need to take them. The real test is teamwork." I read the file. Kakashi blinked. "You read the... Konoha's public archives are poorly secured. You'd think a military village would encrypt its Jonin assessment protocols." He tapped ash from his cigar. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to attack us. I'm going to take the bells. Then we'll go get lunch." Sasuke scowled. "What makes you think you're..." Kakashi moved. It was fast. Jonin fast. 1 second he was standing 10 feet away. The next his fist was buried in Naruto's chest. Through Naruto's chest. Kakashi's arm sank up to the elbow in sand. Naruto's torso had separated, the impact zone becoming a swirling mass of golden grains that flowed around Kakashi's arm like water around a stone. The Jonin's eye went wide. "Kuhahaha!" Naruto's face reformed above Kakashi's trapped arm. That grin. That cold, knowing, predatory grin. "You leave yourself wide open, Sensei." Kakashi yanked his arm back. Sand clung to his sleeve, pulling, tugging. He had to channel chakra to his skin to break free. The grains reluctantly released, flowing back to Naruto's body and reforming seamlessly. "What?" Kakashi started. Naruto placed his right hand on the tree beside Kakashi. Just placed it there, palm flat against bark. The way you'd lean against a wall, the tree died. It started at the point of contact. The bark went gray. The color drained upward and downward simultaneously, chasing the moisture out of the trunk like fire chasing fuel. The leaves curled. The branches sagged. In 2 seconds, the tree looked sick. In 3 seconds, it looked ancient. In 4 seconds, a 60-year-old oak, thick enough that 3 men couldn't link arms around it, turned to gray powder and collapsed. The crash was enormous. Dust billowed. Fragments of what used to be a living tree scattered across the training ground like sand. Sakura screamed. She actually screamed. Her back hit the fence at the edge of the clearing, and she pressed herself against it, eyes wide, mouth open, her academy training completely forgotten. Sasuke didn't scream, but he took 4 steps backward without meaning to. His hands were shaking. He clenched them into fists to make them stop. It didn't work. Kakashi stared at the pile of gray dust that used to be a tree. His mind was racing through every classification of jutsu he knew. Earth release? No. The chakra signature was wrong. Dust release? Closer, but the mechanism was different. This wasn't destruction. This was consumption. This was a power that ate the world and left dust behind. What are you? Kakashi whispered. Naruto held up his right hand. 2 silver bells dangled from his fingers. Done, he said. I took them when you were stuck in my sand. You were so focused on the tree you forgot about your hip pouch. Kakashi's hand shot to his hip. Empty. The bells were gone. He hadn't felt a thing. That's... Kakashi looked at the bells, looked at Naruto, looked at the dead tree. Back at Naruto. That's not fair. Naruto tossed 1 bell to Sasuke, who caught it on reflex, tossed the other to Sakura, who fumbled it, dropped it, and picked it up with trembling hands. Fairness is a luxury for people who've never been in a real fight. You pass us or you don't. Makes no difference to me. He jumped off the boulder, landed without sound. His coat settled around him like a cloak. Now, lunch. I know a place. He walked away. After a long, painful moment of silence, Sasuke followed. Then Sakura. Then Kakashi, who was already composing a very urgent report to the Hokage in his head. Team 7 passed. Kakashi's report to Hiruzen was 6 pages long. Hiruzen read it 3 times. Then he sat in his office with his pipe and stared at the ceiling for an hour. What did that desert do to you, boy? He murmured. The ceiling didn't answer. The first real mission came faster than expected. A C-rank escort to the Land of Waves. A bridge builder named Tazuna. Simple protection detail. Bandits, maybe a few mercenaries. Nothing a Genin team with a Jonin supervisor couldn't handle. That was the pitch, anyway. The reality was something else entirely. The Demon Brothers attacked first. 2 Chunin from Kirigakure, hiding in a puddle on a dry road because subtlety was apparently dead. They launched their chain scythe at Kakashi, wrapping him in barbed links that should have shredded him to pieces. Kakashi substituted. Standard. By the book. The brothers pivoted. Charged Naruto, fast. Coordinated. The chain between them was meant to bisect the target. 1 brother on each side, closing like scissors. The chain hit Naruto. Both brothers felt the impact. Felt the chain go taut. Felt the resistance of a body. Then felt nothing. The chain passed through Naruto's torso, both ends, clean through. His body separated into sand at the contact points and reformed behind the chain as it passed. He didn't flinch. He didn't dodge. He didn't even stop walking. Pathetic, he said. Desert Encierro. Sand erupted from the ground beneath both brothers. It wrapped around their legs, their torsos, their arms, cocoons of golden sand that hardened to stone in half a second. They thrashed, strained, the sand tightened, their bones creaked. Wait, one of them started. Naruto squeezed his right hand into a fist. The sand contracted, the brothers screamed, but only for a moment. The cocoons compressed. Muscle, bone, armor. Everything inside those shells was crushed to a fraction of its volume. When the sand fell away, what dropped to the road was less than what had been there before. Sakura vomited. Sasuke stared. Kakashi appeared beside Naruto. You killed them. They attacked first. They could have been interrogated. They could have. But they chose to bore me with that chain trick, so I chose to make an example. Naruto stepped over the remains. The client is lying, by the way. This is at least a B rank. The men who sent these 2 are still out there. How do you? Because amateurs don't travel in pairs with matching equipment on a random road in the middle of nowhere. They were deployed, which means someone with money is paying for it, which means our drunk bridge builder has enemies above his pay grade. Naruto glanced at Tazuna, who was sweating like a man in a sauna. Am I wrong? Tazuna confessed everything. Gato, the shipping magnate. The man who'd strangled the Land of Waves economy and was now trying to kill the bridge builder to keep his monopoly intact. Kakashi wanted to turn back, The mission parameters had changed. Protocol demanded reassessment. Naruto kept walking. "Where are you going?" Kakashi called. "To the land of waves." The mission just became a lot more interesting. Naruto didn't turn around. Gato is a businessman. Businessmen have assets, ships, trade routes, money, infrastructure, the kind of things that are useful to someone building something from the ground up. Kakashi didn't understand that last part. He would later. They arrived in the land of waves by boat, crossing a fog-heavy stretch of ocean that smelled like salt and decay. The poverty hit them immediately. Empty markets, hollow-eyed children, buildings rotting from neglect. A nation drowning under the boot of a single man's greed. Sakura was disturbed. Sasuke was indifferent. Kakashi was alert. Naruto was interested. Very interested. He saw the bridge first, massive, half-finished. Tazuna's life's work, a connection to the mainland that would break Gato's stranglehold on trade and let the nation breathe again. Naruto looked at that bridge and saw a trade route. He saw shipping lanes. He saw economic leverage over 3 neighboring countries. He saw the first piece of a much larger board. "This bridge will be finished," he said. It sounded like a statement. It sounded like a promise. It sounded like a threat aimed at anyone who might disagree. Zabuza Momochi attacked the next morning. The mist came first, thick, wet, heavy enough to choke on. It rolled across the lake where Tazuna's boat was docked, swallowing visibility in seconds. 8 points. Zabuza's voice echoed from everywhere. Larynx, spine, lungs, liver, jug of subclavian artery, kidneys, heart. Which one should I choose? Sakura trembled. Sasuke activated his newly awakened Sharingan, 2 Tomoe in the right eye, 1 in the left. Kakashi uncovered his own Sharingan. Naruto stood at the water's edge. His coat flapped in the mist wind. He looked bored. "Interesting," he said. Zabuza materialized behind Tazuna, a water clone, massive sword already in mid-swing. Kakashi intercepted it. Blade met kunai. Sparks flew. The real Zabuza was on the lake, standing on the water. Kubikiribocho held across his shoulders. The mist was his domain, his weapon, his armor. "The copy ninja," Zabuza said. "And 3 brats, this won't take long." "You're right," Naruto said, stepping onto the water. "It won't." Zabuza's eyes narrowed. The kid was walking on water, smoothly, effortlessly. His chakra control was water release, water dragon jutsu. The lake exploded upward. A massive dragon of churning water, 40 feet tall, jaws wide, roaring, launched itself at Naruto. Zabuza's hands blurred through seals faster than the eye could track. The dragon hit and went through him. Naruto's body turned to sand where the water struck. The sand dispersed, mixed with the water, and reformed behind the dragon as it crashed into the shoreline. He was standing on the lake again, untouched, unimpressed. "You think water is my weakness?" Naruto's grin widened. He raised his right hand. "It just gives me more to drink." He slammed his palm into the lake's surface. Desert Spada! The water exploded. A blade of compressed sand, impossibly dense, moving at incredible speed, erupted from beneath the lake's surface. It tore upward through 20 feet of water, creating a canyon in the lake itself. Water rushed aside. The mist, Zabuza's precious mist, was split in half by the displaced air pressure. The blade was headed straight for Zabuza. The demon of the mist leaped, barely. The sand spada passed under his feet and kept going. It hit the far shore and carved a trench through solid rock that was 60 feet long and 12 feet deep. From a single palm strike on water, Zabuza landed on a tree branch, breathing hard. His eyes were wide. He'd faced A-rank shinobi. He'd fought Kage. He'd survived the bloody mist. He had never seen anything like this. "What the hell are you?" Zabuza breathed. "Desert Girasol." The ground beneath Zabuza's tree turned to sand. Just became it. Solid earth and root and stone, all of it converting into loose, dry, flowing sand in a circle 50 feet across. The tree sank. Zabuza lost his footing, dropped to the rapidly forming sand pit. It was quicksand. Impossible quicksand, appearing from nowhere, sucking everything down. The tree vanished into it. Other trees followed, tilting, groaning, sinking. Zabuza fought it with chakra, trying to walk on the surface, but this sand was different. It pulled. It hungered. Sable's Pasado. The sand around Zabuza compressed, from all directions, like a fist closing around an insect. Dense, heavy, crushing. Zabuza screamed and used a substitution at the last possible second. A water clone taking his place as the sand compressed it into a flat disk of frozen moisture. He appeared 30 feet away, panting. Kubikira Bocho held in front of him like a shield. "You're fast," Naruto said, walking toward him across the sand. His sand. The entire landscape had shifted to accommodate him. 50 feet of beach and lakeshore and forest floor, all converted to desert. Most people don't escape the Girasol. "Who are you?" "I'm the one who's going to give you a choice, Zabuza." Naruto stopped 10 feet away. His hook gleamed. His eyes were ancient. "You work for Gato. Gato is a cockroach with a bank account. You deserve better than that." Zabuza's grip tightened on his sword. "You don't know what I deserve. I know you tried to overthrow Akaji. I know you failed. I know you've been running ever since, selling your sword to the highest bidder because you've got nowhere else to go." Naruto tilted his head. "What if I gave you somewhere?" Before Zabuza could answer, Haku arrived. The masked boy appeared between them, mirror ice barrier forming, senbon drawn, body positioned to protect Zabuza at any cost. "If you touch Zabuza-sama, I will kill you," Haku said. His voice was cold steel under silk. Naruto looked at Haku, really looked, evaluated him the way Crocodile evaluated potential agents: skill, loyalty, usefulness, price. "Ice release," Naruto said. "A Keke Genkai. Rare, valuable." He looked at Zabuza. "And loyal, very loyal. You have good taste in tools." "Haku is more than a tool," Zabuza growled. "Is he?" Naruto's grin was razor thin. "Then prove it by giving him something worth being loyal to. Join me, both of you. What I'm building is bigger than any mission Gato could offer." "Building what?" "An empire." The word hung in the air like smoke. On the shore, Kakashi was frozen. He'd been ready to intervene the entire time. His Sharingan had been tracking every exchange. But the scale of what he'd witnessed, the lake split open, the forest floor converted to desert, the mist itself torn apart, had recalibrated his understanding of what was possible. "Kakashi-sensei," Sakura whispered from behind the barrier he'd placed around Tazuna. "What? What is he?" Kakashi didn't answer. Because he didn't know. Sasuke watched from the tree line. His Sharingan was burning the images into his memory, the power, the absolute, overwhelming, apocalyptic power. This was what he needed. This was what he'd been chasing. And this orange-haired, no, golden-haired, fur-coated, hook-handed monster had it in spades, his fists clenched. The jealousy was immediate and total. Zabuza stared at Naruto for a long time. Then he started laughing. The demon of the mist laughed hard enough that his bandages shook. "You've got balls, kid. I'll give you that. I've got more than that. I've got vision." The standoff ended without further bloodshed. Zabuza and Haku retreated to consider the offer. Naruto let them go. "You let a rogue ninja walk away," Kakashi said as they returned to Tazuna's house. His voice was carefully neutral. "I let a future employee walk away. There's a difference. The Hokage doesn't need to know the details. What matters is the bridge gets built and the mission is complete." 2 days later, Gato made his move. He didn't trust Zabuza to finish the job, so he brought insurance. 200 mercenaries, armed, armored, stationed at the far end of the unfinished bridge. Gato himself stood behind them, short, fat, smug, surrounded by personal bodyguards. "Kill them all," Gato ordered. "The bridge builder, the ninja, everyone. I'm done negotiating." Team 7 stood at the other end of the bridge. Tazuna behind them. The villagers watching from the shore. Kakashi was ready to fight. Sasuke had his Sharingan spinning. Sakura was gripping a kunai with white knuckles. Naruto walked forward, alone. "Stay here," he said over his shoulder. "This is business." He walked to the center of the bridge, 200 mercenaries on one side, his team on the other. He stopped, looked at the army, looked at Gato. "Kuah!" The laugh echoed across the water. 200 men. Naruto shook his head. "You know what 200 men look like to me?" He crouched, placed his right hand flat on the bridge surface. "Ground death." The word was spoken at conversational volume, but the effect was seismic. From his palm, a wave of absolute desiccation spread across the bridge. The wood lost its color in an instant, brown to gray to white to dust. The concrete supports cracked and crumbled. The rebar inside them rusted and snapped. The wave moved fast, 20, 30, 40 miles per hour, racing toward the army on the other side. The mercenaries in front saw it coming. They turned to run. The ones in back didn't understand why. The wave hit. The first row of mercenaries died mid-stride. Their boots disintegrated. The skin of their feet cracked and split. The moisture in their legs was ripped out so fast that the muscles contracted and snapped the bones. They folded, forward, backward, sideways, collapsing into heaps of dried, cracking husks that crunched like autumn leaves. The second row had time to scream. 1 second of screaming before the ground death reached them. Their armor dried and cracked and fell off like dead skin. Their weapons rusted to powder in their hands. Their eyes sank. Their mouths locked open around screams that turned to whispered hisses as their throats dried out. Row after row, body after body, men who had been alive and angry and armed were reduced to mummified shells that weighed 30 pounds and looked like they'd been dead for centuries. The sound was the worst part. 200 bodies cracking, contracting, drying, collapsing. It sounded like popcorn made of bone. It took 12 seconds. 12 seconds for 200 armed men to become 200 brittle corpses scattered across a bridge that was now bone white and cracking. Gato was the only one left standing. His bodyguards had been at the front. They were dust now. The shipping magnate was on his knees. His suit was soaked with sweat that was evaporating faster than his body could produce it. His skin was tight. His lips were cracking. The ground death was reaching for him, slowly, because Naruto wanted him afraid before he died. "Please," Gato stammered. "I'll give you anything, money, ships, my whole company." "I know you will," Naruto said. He was standing over Gato now, hook gleaming, cigar trailing smoke. "That's why I'm here." He reached into Gato's coat, pulled out a ledger, account numbers, ship manifests, property deeds. Then he grabbed Gato by the throat with his right hand. The moisture drain was slower this time, deliberate. Gato felt every second of it. His skin aged decades in moments. His hair went white, then gray, then fell out in dry clumps. His eyes shrank. His teeth loosened and dropped from receding gums. He tried to scream, but his vocal cords had already dried to strings. When Naruto dropped him, the body was lighter than the coat it wore. "Baroque Works, Wave Branch," Naruto said, tucking the ledger into his coat. "Established." On the shore, the villagers watched in horror and awe. Some cried, some cheered. Most just stared, unable to process what they'd seen. Tazuna fell to his knees. "The bridge you saved." "I invested," Naruto corrected. "This bridge will be completed. It will carry trade, and a percentage of that trade will flow through channels I control. In exchange, the land of waves will prosper. Everyone wins." He glanced back at his team. Sakura was sitting on the ground. She'd stopped processing events 20 minutes ago. Her brain had simply checked out. Sasuke was staring at Naruto with an expression that mixed awe, fury, and hunger in equal parts. The power gap between them was a canyon, and it was growing. Kakashi stood with his hands in his pockets. His Sharingan was covered again. His face betrayed nothing. But behind the mask, his jaw was so tight his teeth ached. "We should head back," Kakashi said. "After the bridge is finished," Naruto said. They stayed another week. The bridge was completed in record time. Naruto's sand clones did the work of 50 men. Zabuza and Haku appeared on the third day. They didn't attack. Zabuza walked up to Naruto, looked at the remains of Gato's empire already being reorganized, and said, "What's the job?" "Manage wave security. Build a network." "Report to me. Pay?" "More than Gato ever offered, and something he never could." Naruto met Zabuza's eyes. A purpose. Zabuza stared for a long time. Then he grinned under his bandages. "You're either going to rule the world or die trying." "Kuhahaha. Who said anything about trying?" Haku bowed. "Formally, completely. We accept. Baroque Works, 2 new agents. Mr. 3, Zabuza Momochi, the demon of the hidden mist. Miss Wednesday, Haku, the ice mirror. They returned to Konoha like the mission report was 6 words long. Bridge completed. Client safe. Threat eliminated. Kakashi submitted a separate classified report to the Hokage. It was 43 pages. Hiruzen read it and didn't sleep for 2 days. The Chunin exams arrived 3 months later. Konoha was hosting, and teams from every major village were pouring through the gates. Naruto saw the exams for what they were: a showcase, a stage, a chance for villages to measure each other's strength through their youngest fighters. It was also an opportunity. Foreign nin in Konoha meant foreign contacts, foreign intelligence, new threads for the web he was weaving. The first phase was Ibiki Morino's written exam, a test of information gathering disguised as a written test. The final question was a bluff: quit and fail the whole team, or stay and risk a permanent ban from future exams. Naruto didn't pick up his pencil. He sat through the entire exam with his arms crossed, cigar behind his ear, staring at Ibiki with mild amusement. Ibiki felt the stare. It bothered him. This was a man who had been tortured, physically, mentally, extensively. And something about the blonde kid in the fur coat made the scars under his bandana itch. When the 10th question came, teams started leaving. Fear, doubt, uncertainty. The room emptied by a third. Naruto yawned. You, Ibiki pointed at him. You haven't written a single answer. You're either very confident or very stupid. I'm neither, Naruto said. I just don't see the point in jumping through hoops for a test I've already passed. You haven't passed anything. I passed the moment I decided to stay. That's the real test, isn't it? He smiled. Dogs who run away to lick their wounds have no right to speak of justice, or, in this case, a promotion. Ibiki stared at him, then laughed. A short, sharp bark of a laugh that surprised everyone in the room. You've got nerve, kid. I've got more than that. Phase 1, cleared. The second phase was the Forest of Death, Anko Mitarashi's playground. 5 days in a death-trap forest with giant animals, hostile teams, and the objective of collecting 2 scrolls, 1 Earth, 1 Heaven. Team 7 entered through Gate 12. Naruto carried the Earth Scroll. He'd taken it from Kakashi's hand without asking. Here's the plan, Naruto told his team. You two stay close and stay alive. I'll handle the rest. I don't need your protection, Sasuke snapped. I know, you need a reality check, but that'll come later. They were ambushed within the first hour. A Rain Village team. 3 genin with poison-tipped weapons and a combined assault strategy. Naruto raised one hand. Sables. A wall of sand rose from the forest floor, 20 feet high, spinning, dense with debris and grit. The Rain team hit it like birds hitting a window, their weapons embedded in the sand. Their jutsu were absorbed. One of them tried to retreat. Desert Encierro. Sand wrapped around the retreating genin, encased him from ankles to neck, compressed. Wait, I'll give you the scroll, the Rain Nin screamed. The sand stopped compressing. 1 inch from bone-breaking pressure, Naruto held out his hand. The Rain Nin's teammate, terrified, shaking, placed the Heaven Scroll in his palm. Smart, Naruto said. The sand released the trapped genin, who collapsed gasping, both scrolls. 43 minutes into a 5-day exam, but Naruto didn't head for the tower. He waited. What are we doing? Sakura asked. Something interesting is coming, Naruto said. He was leaning against a tree, arms crossed, staring into the canopy. The interesting thing arrived on day 2. The trees went silent first. The birds stopped singing, the insects stopped buzzing. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then the killing intent hit. It was massive, oppressive. The kind of bloodlust that didn't come from anger, it came from joy. The joy of a predator who loved the hunt more than the kill. Sakura collapsed to her knees, unable to breathe. Sasuke grabbed his kunai with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. Naruto felt it wash over him like a warm breeze. He exhaled smoke. There you are, he murmured. Orochimaru of the Sannin emerged from the trees like a nightmare taking shape. Pale skin, yellow eyes, a tongue that was too long and too pink and moved in ways tongues shouldn't. He was dressed as a grass nin, but the disguise was paper thin. You couldn't hide what Orochimaru was. He wore his malice like perfume. My, Orochimaru purred. 3 little genin in the big scary forest. His eyes locked on Sasuke. The Sharingan, the Uchiha bloodline, the prize he'd come for. You have something I want, Sasuke-kun. He moved. The speed was insane. Sannin level. Decades of combat experience compressed into a blur of white and purple that crossed 40 feet in a blink. He was heading for Sasuke. His neck extended. That horrifying, snake-like stretch that let his fangs reach targets his body couldn't. The mouth opened. The fangs aimed for the junction of Sasuke's neck and shoulder. The curse mark. The leash Orochimaru would use to pull the Uchiha to his side. The fangs sank into sand. Naruto was standing where Sasuke had been. He'd moved impossibly fast, sand teleportation, his body breaking apart and reforming between Orochimaru and his target in the time it took a heart to beat. Orochimaru's fangs were buried in Naruto's shoulder, in the sand that was Naruto's shoulder. The Sannin's yellow eyes widened. Kuhahaha. The laugh came from the sand itself, from the grains that were now climbing up Orochimaru's extended neck, coating his jaw, seeping into the gaps in his skin. Naruto's real body reformed behind Orochimaru. His right hand closed around the Sannin's throat. The hook pressed against his jaw. You play with snakes, Naruto said. His voice was ice and iron. I rule the wasteland. He squeezed. Orochimaru felt the dehydration begin. His skin, his precious, maintained, body-hopping skin began to tighten. The moisture in his neck was being drawn out through Naruto's fingers. His tongue retracted involuntarily, the muscle drying, stiffening. His eyes, those immortal, scheming yellow eyes, started to burn as the fluid inside them was pulled toward the source of the drain. Orochimaru screamed. It was a sound that didn't belong in a human throat, a shrieking, hissing, rattling scream of pure, uncut terror. Because Orochimaru had been alive for 50 years. He'd fought Kage. He'd invented forbidden jutsu. He'd cheated death more times than anyone could count. And he had never felt his body failing like this. His legendary regeneration was losing the race. His cells were screaming for water that was evaporating faster than his chakra could replace it. His skin was peeling at the contact point, layers of dermis and epidermis drying and flaking off like old paint. "Release me," Orochimaru roared. I don't think I will." The Sanin's body convulsed. Then, with a sound like tearing wet cloth, Orochimaru shed his skin. The entire outer layer of his body, from head to toe, split and fell away as a new body, slick and pink and gasping, erupted from inside the old one. He launched himself backward, 30 feet, 50 feet, hit a tree branch and crouched there, panting, one hand on his throat, staring at Naruto with an expression that had been wiped of everything except raw, animal fear. The shed skin hung in Naruto's grip. He looked at it, dropped it. It crumbled to dust before it hit the ground. "Fascinating," Naruto said. "You shed your body like a snake sheds its scales. That's how you've lived so long." He tilted his head. "I wonder, how many skins can you shed before you run out?" Orochimaru's jaw tightened. His composure was returning, but slowly. The fear was still there, fresh, bright, corrosive. "What are you?" the Sanin whispered. "I'm the desert," Naruto said, "and the desert doesn't negotiate." Orochimaru made a decision. The fastest decision of his very long life. He turned, he ran. The Snake Sanin, the man who had terrorized the ninja world for decades, turned tail and fled from a 12-year-old in a fur coat. He'd come for Sasuke. He left with nothing. Less than nothing. He left with the knowledge that something existed in Konoha that could kill him. Really kill him. Drain him dry until even his soul had nothing to hold on to. Naruto watched him go. He could have chased, could have ended it. But Orochimaru alive and afraid was more useful than Orochimaru dead. Scared snakes do desperate things. Desperate things create opportunities. Behind him, Sasuke Uchiha stood in the clearing with his Sharingan blazing and his mind cracking. He'd watched. All of it. The Sanin, the legendary Sanin, the monster under every ninja's bed, had been grabbed like a disobedient child and nearly killed. By Naruto. The dead last. The class loser. The orphan. The gap between them wasn't a canyon anymore. It was an ocean, and Sasuke was drowning in it. How? Sasuke's voice was ragged. "How are you this strong?" Naruto glanced at him. "Because I decided to be." "That's bullshit." "Koha, is it?" Naruto turned to face him fully. "You've spent years chasing your brother, chasing revenge, chasing a ghost. And what has it gotten you? An ego and two tome." He tapped his hook against his shoulder. "I spent 3 weeks in a desert and remade myself from sand. The difference between us isn't talent or bloodline or destiny. It's commitment." Sasuke's fist shook. His jaw ached from clenching. He wanted to scream. He wanted to attack. He wanted to prove that Itachi's little brother was worth something. But the sand around Naruto's feet was stirring, rolling, ready. And some part of Sasuke, the smart part, the survival part, knew that attacking would end exactly one way. He said nothing. He turned away. He burned. Sakura watched from behind a tree. She was crying. She didn't know why. Team 7 reached the tower in record time, 3 hours and 17 minutes. They had both scrolls before most teams had unpacked their supplies. The proctors stared at them as they walked in. At the boy in the coat. At the hook. At the smoke trailing from the cigar he wasn't supposed to have. Nobody told him to put it out. The preliminary round of the Chunin exams took place inside the tower. One-on-one matches, randomly selected to thin the field for the finals. Naruto was matched against a Sound Village genin named Dosu Kinuta. The bandaged boy with the melody arm, a device that created sound waves powerful enough to rupture eardrums and scramble equilibrium. "Begin," Hayate Gecko called, coughing into his fist. Dosu charged. His melody arm hummed. frequencies building, sound waves targeting Naruto's inner ear, designed to drop him in 3 seconds. The sound waves hit Naruto's body and passed through. Because Naruto's body was sand. Sound waves don't affect sand the same way they affect flesh. There was no inner ear to rupture, no equilibrium to scramble. The vibrations dispersed harmlessly through millions of individual grains. Dosu's confident sprint turned into confused stumbling as his guaranteed technique did absolutely nothing. What? Desert Spada. A blade of sand erupted from the ground and hit Dosu in the chest. It launched him upward, 30 feet into the air, and slammed him into the ceiling. He embedded there for half a second before gravity reclaimed him. He fell, hit the arena floor. The impact cracked 3 ribs in his consciousness. Match time, 4 seconds. The viewing balcony erupted. "What the hell was that?" Kiba screamed. He didn't even move his feet. Ino whispered. Shikamaru had his eyes closed. His brain was running calculations at full speed. Troublesome. That's way beyond Genin. That's beyond Chunin. That's terrifying. Choji finished for him, putting down his chip bag. Choji never put down his chip bag. Neji Yuga activated his Byakugan and studied Naruto's chakra network for the 3rd time since the exams began. Each time he understood less. His body, it's sand all the way through. There's no flesh to target, no tenketsu to close. My gentle fist would go straight through him. Rock Lee was vibrating with excitement. Youthful! Such power! Guy Sensei, I must fight him! Mike Guy placed a hand on Lee's shoulder. His expression was serious. Lee, I want you to listen to me carefully. You will lose. Lee's face fell. But Guy Sensei, I would lose, Guy said. And the way he said it, flat, honest, stripped of his usual flamboyance, silenced the entire Konoha section. In the Kage box, Hiruzen Sarutobi puffed his pipe and watched the boy, who used to eat expired ramen alone in a condemned apartment, walk back to the balcony like he just finished brushing his teeth. Jiraiya needs to see this, Hiruzen murmured. The finals bracket was set. Naruto Uzumaki versus Gaara of the Sand. The 2 most feared jin in the tournament matched against each other in the first round. The village buzzed. The gambling houses went insane. Odds shifted hourly. The Sand Demon versus the Konoha Mystery. The unstoppable force versus the immovable object. Except the people who'd seen Naruto fight knew. This wasn't a contest. It was a demonstration. The month between the preliminaries and the finals was productive. Naruto didn't train. He didn't need to. He spent the time expanding Baroque works, new contacts in the land of tea, a shipping arrangement with a merchant guild in the land of rivers, 3 more agents recruited, a former root operative, a disgraced Sunachunin, and a civilian information broker with connections to 6 different black markets. The empire was growing, quietly, steadily, like sand filling the cracks in a wall. Finals day, the stadium was packed, every seat filled. Nobles, merchants, Kaj, Jonin, civilians, 10,000 people staring at the arena floor, waiting for blood and spectacle. They got both. First match, the proctor announced. Naruto Uzumaki of Konoha versus Gaara of the Sand. Gaara appeared in a swirl of his own sand. The gourd on his back was full. His arms were crossed. His eyes, ringed with insomnia and madness, were locked on Naruto. Mother wants your blood, Gaara said. His voice was flat, dead. The voice of someone who'd been told he was a monster so many times he decided to become one. Naruto walked into the arena. Coat open, hook gleaming. Cigar trailing smoke that mixed with the hot afternoon air. He looked at Gaara. He laughed. Ku-ha-ha! The laugh rang through the stadium. 10,000 people felt it vibrate in their chests. Your sand is heavy, Naruto said, bogged down by blood and grief. My sand. He raised his right hand. The air around it shimmered as billions of grains materialized from nothing, drawn from the earth, the walls, the very dust in the air. My sand is absolute. I'll crush you, Gaara said. His sand erupted from the gourd, a tidal wave, 10 feet high, racing across the arena floor. The sand hit Naruto. The crowd gasped. Dust clouds billowed. The impact shook the stadium. When the dust cleared, Naruto was standing exactly where he'd been. His body had turned to sand at the point of impact, and Gaara's wave had passed through him. More than that, Gaara's sand was now mixed with Naruto's, and Naruto's sand was absorbing it. What? Gaara's eyes widened. He pulled his sand back. It came reluctantly, sluggishly, like it didn't want to leave, like it had found a stronger master. Sand recognizes sand, Naruto said. And yours knows which of us is the real desert. Impossible, Gaara screamed. His composure cracked for the first time anyone had ever seen. He threw both hands forward. Sand tsunami! The gourd emptied. Every grain, combined with the arena floor, Gaara pulling sand from the earth itself, raising a wave 50 feet tall, 100 feet wide, enough sand to bury a building. It crashed toward Naruto like the wrath of a dying god. Naruto walked into it. The crowd screamed. Temari leaped to her feet. Kankuro grabbed the railing. The Kazekage, Orochimaru in disguise, though nobody knew that yet, leaned forward. Naruto walked through the sand tsunami the way you'd walk through fog. His logia body merged with the wave and emerged on the other side. But he didn't just pass through. He converted it. Every grain of Gaara's sand that touched him became his. The wave that hit was Gaara's. The wave that passed was Naruto's. When he emerged on the other side, the entire tsunami was swirling behind him, under his control. Gaara's sand, stolen mid-attack, now orbiting Naruto like a loyal army changing allegiance. Gaara stood alone. His gourd was empty. The ground around him was bare. For the first time in his life, he had no sand to protect him. No, Gaara's voice was a whisper. Mother, mother, where? Naruto was in front of him. One step. He'd crossed 30 feet in one step. Sand teleportation, his body breaking apart and reforming an arm's length from Gaara. He reached through the remaining layer of sand armor. The thin shell that clung to Gaara's skin, his ultimate defense, the shield that had never been breached. It crumbled at Naruto's touch. His fingers found Gaara's cheek, and the draining began. Gaara screamed. The sound was inhuman. Shukaku screamed with him, the one tail thrashing inside its container as the moisture was ripped from its very chakra. The Biju's energy was being consumed, dried, absorbed into an ocean of sand that was deeper and older than anything the One Tail had ever encountered. Gaara dropped to his knees. His sand armor cracked and fell away in chunks. His skin, pale, fragile, never touched by anything, was exposed to the air. His eyes were wide with something he'd never felt before. Fear. Real fear. The kind that comes from understanding that you are small. Naruto held him there, on his knees, one hand on his cheek. The crowd was silent, 10,000 people holding their breath. You think you know loneliness? Naruto said. His voice carried across the silent stadium. You think your sand makes you strong? Your sand is a crutch, a blanket, a mother's hand holding yours because you're too afraid to stand alone. Tears were streaming down Gaara's face. They evaporated before they could fall. Ideals are just cheap talk unless you have the power to realize them, kid. Naruto released him. Gaara collapsed forward, catching himself on his hands, breathing, shaking, alive, because Naruto had chosen to let him live. The stadium erupted. The sound was deafening. Cheering, screaming, gasping, a wall of noise that rolled across the arena like a physical force. Half the crowd was on their feet. The other half was trying to process what they'd seen. He beat Gaara, someone screamed. He beat Gaara without taking a hit. In the Kage box, Hiruzen's pipe had gone out. He hadn't noticed. He was staring at the boy in the arena with an expression that mixed pride, fear, and something that might have been grief. Grief for the innocent child that boy had once been and would never be again. Beside him, the Kazekage, Orochimaru, was gripping the armrest hard enough to crack wood. His plans for the invasion were crumbling in real time. If Gaara, Shukaku's Jinchuriki, his ace card, his weapon of mass destruction, could be brought to his knees by a single genin, then the entire strategy needed to be rebuilt. In the stands, the reactions were cascading. Temari was trembling. He took Gaara's sand. He took it. I didn't know that was possible. Kankuro said nothing. His puppet, Crow, was rattling in its wrappings. Even the puppet could feel it. Shikamaru had his head in his hands. We're the same age as that guy. The same age, and what did I even just watch? Ino gripped Shikamaru's arm. That's the dead last? That's the class clown? How? Hinata had tears in her eyes. Her Byakugan showed her everything. The scale of Naruto's chakra, the depth of his sand, the way reality itself seemed to bend around him. Naruto-kun, Neji stood rigid. His worldview, fate, destiny, the immutable cast of strong and weak, had just been sandblasted into rubble. Impossible, he whispered. But it wasn't. He'd watched it happen. Rock Lee was standing on his seat. Magnificent. The power of his sand exceeds even. Guy pulled him down. The Jonin's face was ashen. Kakashi watched from the stands with his hands in his pockets and his heart rate at twice its normal speed. He thought about the bell test, the tree that had turned to dust, the report he'd written, the things he tried to warn the Hokage about. He'd undersold it. He'd undersold it by an order of magnitude. In the arena, Gaara was being carried away by medics. He was conscious but unresponsive. His sand wasn't moving. It lay around him like dead leaves. Naruto stood alone in the center. The crowd noise was a roar. He took a drag of his cigar, exhaled, and walked out. He didn't bow. He didn't wave. Kings don't perform for crowds. The invasion happened during the chaos of the finals. Orochimaru dropped his disguise, revealed himself as the Kazekage, and all hell broke loose. Sand and sound ninja poured over Konoha's walls. The barrier went up around the roof where Orochimaru faced the third Hokage. Giant snakes rampaged through the streets. Naruto watched it all from a rooftop. He could have intervened, could have ended the invasion in minutes. A single ground death, spread wide enough, would have drained every foreign combatant in a 6-block radius. But he waited, watched, let the chaos play out, because chaos was useful. In the confusion, his sand clones were everywhere. One infiltrated the Hokage's office and copied 3 classified scrolls. One made contact with a Suna officer who'd been on Baroque Works' recruitment list for months. One disabled a Sound Village communication relay and replaced it with his own. The invasion failed. Orochimaru killed the third Hokage. Hiruzen Sarutobi died with his arms around the man he loved like a son, sealing Orochimaru's jutsu away at the cost of his own life. Naruto stood on that rooftop and watched the barrier fall. Watched the Anbu carry the body down. Watched the village he'd grown up in mourn the only man who'd ever shown him kindness. He felt something. A twinge, a pull. Not grief. He was beyond grief. But acknowledgement. The old man had been kind. In a world that wasn't kind, that meant something. "You were a fool, Sarutobi," Naruto murmured, cigar smoke curling around his words. "But you were an honest one. That's rarer than you knew." He dropped the cigar, crushed it under his heel, turned away from the funeral that was already being planned. There was work to do. Tsunade became the 5th Hokage. Jiraiya brought her back. Naruto didn't participate in that retrieval. He had agents tracking Tsunade's location already, and her return to Konoha was inevitable once Jiraiya found her. Why waste his own time? What he did during those weeks was far more productive. He expanded Baroque Works into 3 new territories. He established a permanent intelligence network spanning from Suna to Kiri. He recruited 2 more high-level agents, a former Suna Anbu captain and a missing Nin from Iwa with demolition expertise. The Empire was real now, growing in the cracks of the shinobi world like roots in a stone wall. Give it enough time, and those roots would crack the wall wide open. But then Sasuke made his move. The Sound Four came for him at midnight. 4 of Orochimaru's elite, each carrying a curse mark, each promising the power that Sasuke craved more than air. Sasuke left, packed his bag, walked through the village, and headed for the border. Sakura tried to stop him. She stood at the village gate with tears streaming and begged him to stay. He thanked her, knocked her out, left her on a bench. By morning, the alarm was raised. Tsunade assembled a retrieval team. Shikamaru led it, 5 genin sent to bring back a traitor. Naruto wasn't on the team. He hadn't been asked. He didn't wait to be. He left Konoha alone, an hour behind the retrieval team, moving faster than any of them could because Naruto didn't care about Sasuke's feelings. He didn't care about his trauma or his revenge or his sad, self-destructive obsession with his brother. What Naruto cared about was the Sharingan, the most valuable Kekkei Genkai in the shinobi world, a genetic gold mine sitting in the skull of a teenager who was about to hand-deliver it to Orochimaru. That wasn't going to happen. Assets didn't walk away from the board. The retrieval team fought the Sound Four along the way. Choji took on the big one. Neji took on the spider. Kiba and Akamaru took on the twins. Shikamaru took on the bone user. Naruto passed all of them. He moved through the forest like wind through leaves, his body breaking into sand and reforming 20-30 yards ahead in each burst. He didn't stop to help. The side battles were distractions. The target was ahead. He caught up to Sasuke at the Valley of the End. The place was iconic. The 2 massive statues, Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha, facing each other across the waterfall, frozen in eternal opposition. The birthplace of the village. the graveyard of a friendship. Sasuke was standing on Madara's head. His curse mark was already spreading, black flame patterns crawling across his skin, transforming him, filling him with borrowed power. Naruto appeared on Hashirama's head. He stood there, coat flapping, hook catching the afternoon light. The waterfall roared between them. Kuahaha! The laugh rolled across the valley. Look at you, running to a snake because you're too weak to find power on your own. Sasuke's Sharingan blazed. 3 tomoe in each eye, spinning, furious. You don't know anything about me. I know everything about you. You're a boy with a dead family and a dream of murder. You think Orochimaru will give you the strength to kill Itachi. He won't. He'll give you a cage with better lighting. Shut up! Purple chakra erupted around Sasuke. The curse mark spread further, covering half his face, darkening his sclera, warping his features. You don't get to lecture me. You've had power this whole time. You never struggled. You never lost everything. You don't know what it's like to what? Suffer? Naruto's voice cut through the roar of the falls. I was alone before I could walk, hated before I could speak, left to die in a desert at 7 years old. The difference between us isn't pain, Sasuke. It's what we did with it. You let yours make you stupid. Sasuke screamed. Pure rage. Pure curse mark. His body completed the transformation, level 2. Wings of grotesque, hand-shaped protrusions erupted from his back. His skin went gray. His hair grew long and wild. His eyes became pits of black and gold. He raised his left hand. Lightning gathered. Black lightning. Chidori corrupted by the curse mark's power, screaming with energy that cracked the stone under his feet. Black Chidori! He launched himself across the valley. The sound barrier broke. Sasuke was a meteor of black lightning and borrowed power. Aimed at Naruto's chest with everything he had, Naruto dropped his cigar, watched it fall toward the water far below. His lower half turned to sand. His entire body from the waist down erupted into a swirling storm of golden grains that spread across Hashirama's statue like a living carpet. Desert La Spada. From the sand, blades erupted. 10 of them. 20. Compressed sand edges moving at bullet speed, fanning out in every direction. They hit the waterfall, and the water split, cleaved into separate streams that fell in sheets to either side. They hit the cliff walls and carved trenches deep enough to hide in. They hit Madara's statue and the ancient stone cracked, a gash running from shoulder to hip across the first Uchiha's carved chest. One of them hit Sasuke. He tried to dodge. With his curse mark speed, he almost managed it. Almost. The blade caught his right wing and sheared it clean off. Sasuke spun, lost altitude, crashed into the surface of the lake at the base of the waterfall. He came up screaming. The pain was white hot. His curse mark was already regenerating the wing, but it was slow, and the sand blade had left residual grains in the wound that were actively draining the moisture from the cursed tissue. Naruto! Sasuke rocketed out of the water. Black Chidori reformed. He aimed for the head this time. Naruto reformed fully, stood on the water. Waited. Sasuke's hand hit his face, went through it. Sand, all sand. The Chidori discharged into a million grains that scattered and reformed behind Sasuke. Naruto's real body was behind him now. His right hand closed around Sasuke's left wrist, the Chidori arm, and squeezed. The draining hit Sasuke like a freight train. Every cell in his body screamed as the moisture was ripped out through the contact point. His curse mark, which ran on chakra, which ran on biological energy, which depended on water and blood and living tissue, recoiled. The black patterns retreated from the drain site, pulling back like a tide going out. Sasuke thrashed. His wings shrank. His skin lightened. The curse mark was being forced back, sealed by the simple, brutal reality that its host's body was dying of dehydration. His muscles seized. His Sharingan flickered. 3 tomoe, 2, 1 gone. His eyes went black. Normal, human. Weak, his knees hit the water. Naruto held him there, one hand on his wrist. The curse mark was almost completely receded now, just a few fading marks on Sasuke's neck, the seal struggling to maintain itself in a body that no longer had the moisture to sustain it. Sasuke looked up. His face was gaunt. His lips were cracked. His eyes, his normal, human, Uchiha eyes, were filled with something worse than anger, despair. Sasuke croaked. Why are you this strong? Why can't I? Because you're chasing ghosts, and I'm building something real. Naruto released him. Sasuke collapsed into the shallow water, gasping, broken, his curse mark dormant and his body drained to the edge of consciousness. Naruto looked at him for a long moment. Then he reached down and threw Sasuke over his shoulder like a sack of rice. He turned toward the waterfall, toward the statues, Hashirama and Madara, frozen in their eternal stupid argument about how to run the world. "This world is a joke," Naruto said. His voice was steady, certain, the voice of a man who'd made a decision that nothing in heaven or earth would change. Built on lies and half measures and treaties written by cowards, the strong hide behind the weak and call it peace. The villages hoard power and call it balance. And everyone pretends the system works because the alternative is admitting they've been slaves their whole lives. He looked at Madara's statue, at Hashirama's, at the cracked stone and the split waterfall and the unconscious Uchiha on his shoulder. "I think it's time I built my utopia." He walked away from the Valley of the End, Sasuke on his shoulder, the water slowly filling the cuts his sand had carved. The statues watching him go with their stone eyes and their stone arguments and their stone irrelevance. He returned to Konoha at sunset, walked through the gates, dropped Sasuke at the hospital entrance, kept walking. Tsunade met him on the main road. She'd been waiting. Her arms were crossed. Her eyes were sharp. "You retrieved the Uchiha." "I retrieved an asset. He's a person. He's a person with the most valuable bloodline in the shinobi world who almost handed it to a snake. You're welcome." Tsunade stared at him. She'd read the files. She'd heard Kakashi's reports. She'd seen the preliminary footage from the Chunin exams. But standing here 3 feet away, feeling the dry weight of his presence. "What are you planning, Naruto?" He stopped, looked at her over his shoulder. The golden hook caught the setting sun. "Something better," he said. "Kua!" He walked away, into the village, into the evening, into the growing web of an empire that was already larger than anyone in Konoha suspected. The retrieval team returned over the next 2 days. Choji, in critical condition, he'd used the last of his family's pills to beat Jirobo. Neji, severely wounded, his gentle fist had barely been enough to outlast Kidomaru's spider techniques. Kiba and Akamaru, bruised and battered from their fight with the twins. Shikamaru, the only one uninjured, carrying the weight of having sent his friends into battles that nearly killed them. They all survived. Barely. Naruto visited none of them, but sand clones delivered packages to each of their hospital rooms. Inside each package, a sealed scroll containing advanced recovery medicine, rare and expensive, sourced from Baroque Works' growing pharmaceutical network. No note, no signature, just the medicine. Shikamaru stared at his package for a long time. Then he closed his eyes and sighed. That guy, he's going to be the biggest problem this world has ever seen. He wasn't wrong. In the weeks that followed, Konoha licked its wounds. Sasuke was confined to the village, his curse mark dormant, his defection attempt logged, his movements watched. He trained alone, furiously, desperately. But the gap remained. Every time he thought he'd grown stronger, he'd see Naruto crossing the village square with that coat and that hook and that cigar, and the gap felt wider than ever. Orochimaru sent more agents. They came in the night. Sound Nin, curse mark carriers, specialists in abduction. They came for Sasuke. Naruto intercepted every single one. He didn't even leave his apartment for most of them. Sand clones, dispersed throughout Konoha's blind spots, detected the infiltrators hours before they breached the perimeter. The clones dealt with them, silently, efficiently. The morning after each attempt, the border patrol would find mummified husks in the forest, dried, cracked, 30-pound reminders that someone was guarding the investment. Orochimaru got the message. The attempt stopped. Jiraiya of the Sannin arrived in Konoha on a Tuesday. He arrived one afternoon, loud and ridiculous and smelling like sake and hot springs. He came because Tsunade had sent a message, because Kakashi had sent a message, because every intelligence report coming out of Konoha for the past 6 months had included the same warning. Something has changed. Something has changed in Naruto Uzumaki, and we are all unprepared. Jiraiya found Naruto on the roof of the Hokage Tower, sitting on the edge, legs dangling, cigar smoke rising. "So you're the Toad Sage," Naruto said. He didn't turn around. "You're shorter than I expected." Jiraiya laughed, big, booming, the kind of laugh that filled a room. "And you're the kid who's got every Kage in the 5 great nations asking questions." "Only 5? I'm losing my touch." Jiraiya sat beside him. For a long moment, they looked out over the village in silence. The setting sun painted Konoha in shades of gold and rust. "I knew your father," Jiraiya said. "The fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze. I know." Jiraiya blinked. "How did you?" "I know everything I need to know. About him, about my mother, about the fox sealed in my gut and the reason this village hates me." Naruto blew a smoke ring. "I'm past being angry about it. Anger is for people who don't have a plan. And you have a plan? Kuhaha!" That laugh, low and rolling and cold. "I have an empire." Jiraiya studied the boy, looked past the coat and the hook and the smoke, tried to find the orphan underneath, tried to find Minato's son, tried to find Kushina's boy. He found someone else entirely, someone ancient, someone who had lived before and learned everything the wrong way and come out the other side with a vision that had nothing to do with being a hero. "Your father wanted to protect this village," Jiraiya said. "My father is dead. His dream died with him. What's left is a village that used his sacrifice as an excuse to abuse his son." Naruto stood up, brushed ash from his coat. "I won't destroy Konoha. It's useful, but I won't die for it either. The world that's coming, the one I'm building, doesn't need martyrs. It needs architects." He jumped off the roof. His body turned to sand halfway down and reformed on the ground level, walking away without breaking stride. Jiraiya sat on the roof for a long time. The sun set. The stars came out. "Minato," he whispered, "your boy is terrifying." In the months that followed, Naruto operated on two fronts. Above ground, Team 7 missions, village life, the bare minimum of shinobi duties required to maintain his cover. Below ground, Baroque works expanded into 17 countries. Intelligence networks, trade monopolies, weapons caches, safe houses. An army of agents numbered and ranked, each with a code name, each knowing only their immediate superior. The system was elegant. Each agent knew their role, but never the full picture. Information flowed upward. Orders flowed downward. At the top, at the very center of the web, sat Naruto Uzumaki, the boy in the fur coat, the Desert King reborn, lighting a cigar and moving pieces across a board that spanned continents. Zabuza ran the Wave Country operations. Haku handled intelligence in Kiri, using his ice mirrors to intercept communications across the entire island nation. The former Root operative managed Konoha's underbelly. The Suna defector handled the western territories. And nobody suspected that the center of this web was a 13-year-old Genin, because that was the beauty of it. The best disguise in the world is being underestimated. And despite everything Naruto had done, despite the Chunin exams, despite the Wave mission, despite the Orochimaru encounter, the shinobi world still thought of him as Konoha's Jinchuriki, a weapon, a tool, something to be contained and pointed at enemies. They'd learn. Eventually, when it was too late, the day Naruto left Konoha, he didn't make a scene. He didn't fight at the gate. He didn't write a letter or leave a note or tell anyone goodbye. He simply walked out at 3 in the morning, the same way Sasuke had tried to, except nobody stopped him because nobody sensed him leave. His body was sand. Sand doesn't trigger proximity barriers. Sand doesn't leave footprints. Sand doesn't set off the detection seals at the gate. One moment he was in Konoha. The next he was gone. A pile of golden dust on his apartment floor. The remains of a sand clone that had been living his life for the past 3 days while the real Naruto had already left. They didn't realize he was gone for a week. When they did, Tsunade sent 3 Anbu teams. They searched for a month. Found nothing. You don't find the desert finds you. In a cave in the land of wind, deep in the demon desert where it all began, Naruto sat on a throne of compressed sand, his coat draped over the armrest, his hook resting against his jaw. Before him, kneeling in a line, were 12 agents, the highest-ranked members of Baroque works, each wearing a numbered coat, each deadly in their own right, each loyal to the man on the throne. "Phase 1 is complete," Naruto said. His voice echoed off the sandstone walls. "Konoha has been mapped, infiltrated, and seeded with assets. The Land of Waves is ours. The Kiri Intelligence Network is ours. The Western trade routes are ours." He leaned forward. The torchlight caught his eyes, and they burned like blue stars in a desert sky. Phase 2 begins now. The shinobi world has 5 great villages and 100 petty kingdoms, all held together by treaties written in blood and maintained by fear. We're going to show them what real fear looks like. He stood. 12 agents rose with him. 3 years, Naruto said. In 3 years, I'll return to the shinobi world stage. And when I do, they'll learn what they should have learned the day I walked out of this desert as a child. He raised his hook. It caught the firelight like a golden crown. That you don't get to decide what I am. I've already decided for myself, and I decided to be the one who changes everything. He smiled. That cold, ancient predator's smile. Kuhaha. The laugh echoed through the cave, through the sand, through the desert that had birthed him and would carry his name to the ends of the earth. Far away, in a village of leaves and lies, Kakashi Hatake stood in an empty apartment. He looked at the pile of golden dust on the floor. He looked at the bare walls and the dripping faucet and the window that still had a crack from a bottle thrown by someone who'd feared a child because they didn't have the courage to face themselves. He thought about a boy who turned his fist to sand, a boy who drained a tree to dust, a boy who'd walked through every challenge like the world was a game he'd already beaten once. He's gone, Kakashi said to nobody. The dust shifted. A breeze from the open window carried a handful of golden grains out into the night, where they caught the moonlight and glittered for half a second before vanishing. The dust shifted. A breeze from the open window carried a handful of golden grains out into the night, where they caught the moonlight and glittered for half a second before vanishing. And the world kept turning. It kept turning the way it always did. Blind, stubborn, convinced that the gears would hold because they'd always held. The 5 great villages ran their missions and trained their soldiers and signed their treaties and pretended the foundation wasn't crumbling beneath their feet. They held summits and passed intelligence reports and told each other that the system was stable, that the will of fire burned bright, that the stone endured, that the mist concealed, that the cloud climbed, that the sand persisted. They told each other a lot of things. They didn't tell each other about the shipping lane between Wave Country and the Land of Tea that now ran through a company owned by a ghost. They didn't mention that 3 separate intelligence ministries had agents on payrolls they'd never authorized. They didn't bring up the fact that weapons-grade sealing materials were flowing through the eastern black markets at twice the normal rate, funneled through channels so clean that forensic accountants from Konoha's own intelligence division couldn't find the source. Nobody talked about the sand, because nobody had connected the dots yet. The dots were in 17 countries. The dots were in hundreds of hands. The dots were a web so wide and so finely threaded that seeing any one strand told you nothing about the spider at the center. 3 years is a long time. Long enough for a seed to become a tree. Long enough for a whisper to become a roar. Long enough for a boy who left a pile of golden dust on his apartment floor to become something that didn't have a name yet, because the world hadn't invented a word for what he was. Naruto Uzumaki turned 16 in the Demon Desert. There was a cake. Haku made it. Zabuza watched from the doorway with his arms crossed and his bandages hiding a grin he'd never admit to. 12 agents stood in a half circle in the throne room of the underground fortress and sang badly because most of them were killers and spies and none of them had ever been to a birthday party. Naruto ate the cake. He said it was acceptable. Coming from him, that was a standing ovation. Then he lit a cigar, leaned back on his throne of compressed sand and said the words that changed the shape of the world. It's time. 2 words. The room went still. Zabuza's grin disappeared. Haku set down the knife he'd been using to cut seconds. The former root operative in the corner, Agent Mr. 5, straightened his back like someone had poured ice water down his spine. Phase 2, Naruto said. He exhaled smoke. It curled between the torches and disappeared into the sandstone ceiling. 3 years of building, 3 years of planting, 3 years of letting the shinobi world believe I'm a runaway Jinchuriki hiding in a cave somewhere. That story ends today. He stood. The coat settled around him, heavy, fur-lined, draped across shoulders that had broadened in 3 years of desert living. He was tall now, 6 feet, lean but dense, like a blade that had been folded too many times to break. The hook gleamed on his left wrist, golden and sharp and worn with the ease of a man who'd carried it across 2 lifetimes. His face had hardened. The baby fat was gone. The whisker marks had thinned into lines that looked less like scars and more like war paint. His jaw was cut. His eyes still blue, still that impossible, ocean-deep blue. Looked at the world the way a surgeon looks at a patient who's already on the table. He was 16 and he looked like a king because he was one. Zabuza, status on the Kiri network, operational. Haku's mirrors cover 60% of their internal communications. The rebellion is armed and waiting for the signal. Mr. 5, Konoha's current intelligence posture. 6th Hokage candidate discussions are ongoing. Kakashi Hatake is the frontrunner but hasn't accepted. Tsunade is still in command. 3 of our embedded agents remain undetected. Root is officially disbanded, but Danzo maintains a private force of 11 operatives. The Kage Summit, when? 17 days. Land of Iron. Mifune is hosting. All 5 Kage have confirmed attendance. Agenda Akatsuki threat assessment and the matter of the missing Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. Naruto smiled. That slow, hook glint, cigar smoke smile that made the air in the room drop 3 degrees. They want to talk about me. How kind. He tapped ash from his cigar. I think I'll attend. Zabuza laughed. The sound was like gravel being crushed. You're going to walk into a room with 5 Kaji and their bodyguards. I'm going to walk into a room with 5 Kaji and their bodyguards and sit at the head of the table. Naruto looked at him. And none of them are going to do a damn thing about it. Kuhaha! The laugh rolled through the fortress, through the sand, through the tunnels that connected this place to a network spanning half the continent, 17 days. The clock started. The land of iron was cold. Snow country. Samurai territory. Neutral ground, maintained by Mifune's warrior code and the understanding that no shinobi village wanted to be the one who violated the truce of the summit hall. The 5 Kaj arrived with their entourages over 3 days. Security was layered. Samurai patrols on the perimeter, Ambu equivalent from each village forming overlapping surveillance nets, detection barriers tuned to identify foreign chakra signatures within a 2-mile radius. They were very thorough. They missed the sand. Because sand doesn't have a chakra signature. Sand is matter. It passes through detection barriers the same way air does, invisibly, naturally, as though it belongs. And when a handful of grains drifts under a door or through a crack in a window frame, nobody notices. Sand is beneath notice. Sand is everywhere and therefore nowhere. The morning of the summit, the 5 most powerful leaders in the shinobi world gathered around a circular table in the heart of the Iron Fortress. Their bodyguards flanked them. Samurai guards stood at the doors. Mifune sat at the moderator's position, white-haired and straight-backed, his katana across his knees. The Raikage, the 4th, sat like a thunderstorm compressed into human form. Arms folded, lightning chakra crackling beneath his skin in a constant, low hum. Beside him stood Darui and C, weapons ready. The Tsuchikage, Onoki, the fence-sitter, hovered an inch off his seat because his back wouldn't let him sit properly. Kurotsuchi and Akatsuchi flanked him, one sharp and the other massive. The Kazekage, Gaara of the Sand, the youngest Kage in history, sat with his arms crossed and his sand gourd leaning against his chair. Tamari and Kankuro stood behind him. Gaara's eyes were steady. He'd been steady since the day a boy in a fur coat had held him on his knees and shown him what real power looked like. The Mizukage, Mei Terumi, newly installed after a bloody revolution that everyone suspected had outside help, sat with her hands folded and a pleasant smile that hit a mind like a razor. Ao and Chojiro flanked her. The Hokage, Tsunade Senju, the 5th, the slug princess, the woman who'd inherited every mess the previous 4 Hokage had left behind, sat with her jaw tight and her eyes sharp. Kakashi and Shizune stood behind her. Mifune opened his mouth to begin proceedings. The doors blew open. Sand came first, a thin golden mist that rolled across the floor like fog, seeping under chairs and around feet, and filling the gaps between the stone tiles. The temperature in the room dropped, humidity vanishing, lips tightening, eyes stinging as the air went dry. Then the footsteps, steady, unhurried, the click of a golden hook against a belt buckle, the rustle of a heavy fur coat against stone. Naruto Uzumaki walked into the 5 Kage summit the way you walk into your own living room. He didn't pause at the threshold. He didn't announce himself. He moved past the samurai guards, who reached for their swords and then didn't draw them because the sand around their ankles had hardened to concrete and they couldn't move their feet He walked past the bodyguards, past Darui, whose hand was on his cleaver, past Kurotsuchi, whose mouth was open in a half-formed jutsu, past Tamari, who recognized the coat and the hook and the walk and went white, past Chojuro, whose sword trembled in his grip, past Kakashi, whose single visible eye tracked the boy, the young man, like a wolf tracking an avalanche. Naruto pulled out the chair at the head of the table, the one that wasn't meant for anyone. The moderator's overflow seat that Mifune had left empty because protocol demanded it. He sat down, crossed one leg over the other, rested his hook on the armrest, lit a cigar. For 3 seconds, nobody breathed. Then the Raikage exploded. What is the meaning of this? A slam, both fists on the table. The wood cracked from edge to edge. Lightning chakra erupted across his forearms, blue, white, and screaming with power. Guards, remove this. Sit down, Raikage. Naruto's voice wasn't loud. It filled the room anyway, the way thunder fills a valley, from everywhere at once, pressing against the walls, leaving nowhere to hide. I won't say it twice. You dare. Naruto placed his right hand flat on the table, palm down, fingers spread. The effect was instant. The crack it had made in the table widened. Then it spread. The wood around Naruto's palm went gray, color draining, grain tightening, moisture evacuating in a wave that raced across the surface. The table aged 100 years in 2 seconds. The varnish flaked, the joins cracked, papers on the surface curled and browned. The water jug at the center, full, glass, sweating with condensation, went dry. The water inside it evaporated. The glass itself fogged and cracked as the moisture in the air around it vanished. The wave stopped 6 inches from every Kage's hands. Perfectly, intentionally, a message. A stared at the dead, bone-white wood in front of him. His lightning chakra flickered. He didn't sit down, but he stopped talking. Onoki leaned forward. His old eyes were bright and dangerous. Naruto Uzumaki, the missing Jinchuriki. 3 years you've been gone, boy. You pick a hell of a way to come back. I pick the way that gets attention. Naruto exhaled smoke. And you've all been paying attention for a while now. You just didn't know it. Tsunade's knuckles were white against the armrests of her chair. Naruto, what are you doing here? I'm here because this summit is about me, about the Akatsuki targeting the Jinchuriki, about the power vacuum in Kiri, about the destabilization of trade routes across 3 continents. He looked at each Kage in turn, held each gaze for exactly long enough to make them feel weighed. And because every single one of those problems has my fingerprints on it. Gaara spoke. His voice was sand and stone and something that had been forged in fire. You've been behind the trade disruptions, behind them, above them, running them. The intelligence leaks in Suna, mine. The weapon shipments to the Kiri rebellion, also mine. The room was so silent you could hear the snowflakes hitting the windows. Naruto reached into his coat. Every bodyguard in the room tensed. Hands went to weapons. Chakra flared. Darui's cleaver came halfway out of its sheath. Naruto pulled out a scroll, set it on the ruined table, pushed it to the center with one finger. Open it, he said. Mifune, who had been frozen since the doors opened, reached for the scroll. His samurai training was the only thing keeping his hand steady. He broke the seal, unrolled it, his face went gray. Read it aloud, Naruto said. Mifune's mouth opened, closed. He looked at Naruto, at the Kage, at the scroll. I cannot. Then I will. Naruto took a drag. That scroll contains 312 documented incidents, treaty violations by Kumo, including the attempted kidnapping of a Hyuga clan member 11 years ago and the kidnapping of a 7-year-old Jinchuriki 3 years before that. Ei's jaw tightened so hard a muscle in his neck stood out like cable. Assassination orders signed by the 3rd Tsuchikage's office targeting diplomats from 3 allied nations during peacetime. Onoki's hovering height dropped 2 inches. Financial records showing that the Wind Daimyo has been siphoning military funds from Suna's defense budget for 15 years, leaving the village deliberately weakened. Gaara's eyes flickered. Tamari's hand went to her fan. Intelligence proving that the former Mizukage Yagura was being externally manipulated by a Genjutsu user, which means every atrocity committed during the Bloody Mist era was engineered from outside. Mei's pleasant smile vanished like smoke in wind, and documentation of Root's continued operation in Konoha under Danzo Shimura, including 17 unauthorized missions that violated Fire Country's own laws. Tsunade stood up. Her chair hit the wall. That scroll and its contents had been copied to 30 separate locations across the continent, Naruto continued. He was speaking to the room, to every ear, to history itself. Libraries, information brokers, underground archives, the offices of every daimyo in every nation. If anything happens to me, anything at all, the release is automatic. Within 48 hours, every secret in that scroll becomes public knowledge. Every treaty collapses. Every alliance burns. Every government in this room loses the one thing keeping it in power, the illusion that it's trustworthy. Dead air. The kind of silence that happens after an explosion, when the dust is still rising and nobody's sure what's left standing. Sat down. He sat down because his legs chose to, because his body understood something his pride was still fighting, that the boy at the head of the table had just wrapped a leash around every throat in the room. Onoki's face was a map of fury. Lines deepening, jaw working, the ancient stubbornness of a man who'd survived 3 wars, grinding against the reality that he'd just been outmaneuvered by someone a quarter of his age. You arrogant little. Arrogance implies a gap between confidence and ability. Naruto tapped ash onto the dead table. I have none. This is extortion, Onoki hissed. This is leverage. Extortion would be making demands. I'm making an announcement. Naruto leaned forward. The torchlight caught his hook and threw a golden line across the table. I didn't come here to ask permission. I came to tell you how things are going to work now. He paused. Let the silence build. Let it press against every person in the room like sand filling a jar. Kuhahaha. The laugh was low and final, and it settled into the bones of everyone who heard it. Gaara's hands were flat on the table. His gourd trembled behind him, the sand inside stirring, agitated, responding to the presence of a greater desert. He remembered, he would always remember, the hand on his cheek, the drain, the tears that evaporated before they could fall. What do you want? Gaara asked. His voice was level, the only Kaji in the room who asked the right question. I want you to be aware, Naruto said. I want you to know that the board has changed, that the pieces have moved, and that the person moving them isn't wearing a red cloud cloak in some cave. He's sitting right here, smoking a cigar, telling you to your faces. He stood up, the coat swung. I'll deal with the Akatsuki. That's my gift to you. Consider it a down payment on a future where we have a more productive relationship. He walked toward the door. The samurai guards, still rooted, their feet still locked in hardened sand, stared straight ahead. How do we know you'll keep your word? Tsunade's voice stopped him. Hard. Strained. The voice of a woman who'd watched a boy she once knew become something she couldn't define. Naruto stopped at the threshold, looked back over his shoulder. You don't. That's the point. Power is the only guarantee that matters in this world. I have it. You don't. He put the cigar between his teeth. Trust is for people who've never been betrayed. I prefer insurance. He walked out. Behind him, 5 Kage sat around a ruined table in a frozen room, and every single one of them understood, fully, completely, with the kind of clarity that comes only from being shown a mirror you can't look away from, that the world they'd known was already gone. Kakashi stared at the doorway, at the golden dust settling on the threshold, at the faint smell of cigar smoke and dry wind. That's Naruto, Sakura would have said if she'd been there. But she wasn't. She was in Konoha, working at the hospital, living a life that had quietly diverged from this story 3 years ago. That's not Naruto, Kakashi thought. That's something that used to be. The Akatsuki moved 3 weeks after the summit. Pain. Nagato, the man behind the 6 paths, the Rinnegan wielder, the self-proclaimed god, had been watching. His intelligence network was good. It intercepted fragmented reports of the summit, of the boy who'd walked in and made 5 Kaji sit in silence, of the organization called Baroque Works that was spreading through the shinobi world's underground like roots through stone. The Nine Tails was still the prize. The Eye of the Moon plan required all 9 Biju. 8 were accounted for. The 9th was walking around in a fur coat making threats at international summits. Pain sent his best. There was no other option. Itachi Uchiha and Kasame Hoshigaki found Naruto in the Land of Rivers on a Wednesday afternoon. He was sitting at a riverside tea house, drinking green tea, reading a report on tariff structures in the Land of Hot Water. He'd known they were coming for 6 hours. Baroque Works' sensor network had picked them up crossing the border at dawn. He let them come. Because some lessons needed to be taught in person, Kasame arrived first. He always did. The man was a wall, 7 feet tall, blue-skinned, shark-toothed, carrying Samehada on his back like a second spine. The sword was alive, a sentient, chakra-eating weapon wrapped in bandages that twitched and shivered with hunger. Well, Kasame's grin was all teeth. The little Jinchuriki sitting pretty, drinking tea. Itachi-san, you sure this is the guy who's got everyone scared? Itachi emerged from the tree line like a shadow given permission to exist. Akatsuki cloak, Sharingan spinning, face blank. The blankness of a man who'd killed his own family and spent every day since then dying slowly from the inside. He looked at Naruto. Naruto looked at him. The tea house owner had already fled. Smart man. Itachi Uchiha. Naruto set down his cup. The prodigy who massacred his clan, and Kasame Hoshigaki, the tireless-tailed beast. The Akatsuki sent their best. He stood. The coat fell into place. The hook caught the afternoon light. I'm almost flattered. We're here for the Nine Tails, Kasame said. Samehada was already unwrapped, the scales bristling, the mouth at the sword's tip gaping with anticipation. Come easy and we'll make it painless. Kuha! Naruto stepped away from the table. His feet touched the riverbank. The water in the river began to recede, imperceptibly at first, then visibly, the level dropping an inch, 2 inches, the moisture in the air thinning as his presence pressed against the environment like a hand pressing against a throat. Nothing about what's going to happen to you will be painless. Kasame moved. He was fast for his size, brutally fast. Samehada led the charge, the living sword screaming through the air, aimed at Naruto's chest. Scales flared to absorb whatever chakra it touched. Water release, exploding water, colliding wave. Kasame spat a torrent. The river erupted. Millions of gallons of water rose from the channel and crashed inland. A tsunami in miniature, roaring, churning, filling the low ground around the tea house until the entire battlefield was knee-deep in Kasame's element. The water hit Naruto. His body separated. Sand dispersed through the wave like ink and milk, golden grains mixing with the current, flowing, reforming behind the surge. The water passed. Naruto stood exactly where he'd been, bone dry, every grain accounted for. You think water is my weakness? The grin was razors and indifference. It just gives me more to drink. He raised his right hand. Desert Spada. The blade came from below, a compressed edge of sand that erupted from the riverbed, through 3 feet of water, through the current, through Kasame's reservoir, and split the artificial lake in half. Water fell to either side in curtains. The ground beneath was carved open, a trench 40 feet long and 10 feet deep, the earth inside already turning gray and dry. Kasame dodged, barely. The Spada passed close enough to shave scales off Samehada's surface. The sword shrieked. Fast! Kasame laughed. He swung Samehada in a wide arc, a sweeping strike that should have caught Naruto across the torso. The blade entered his chest. Samehada's scales touched sand. The sword's absorption mechanism activated, sucking, pulling, drinking the chakra from whatever it touched. It drank and couldn't stop. Naruto's sand body was chakra. Every grain was fused with it, intertwined at a level so deep there was nothing to separate. Samehada was trying to eat a desert. The sword's scales expanded, its body swelled. Chakra poured into it faster than it could process, faster than it could store, faster than anything it had ever consumed. Samehada screamed, a real scream. The howl of a living thing being force-fed until its insides tore. The bandages burst. The scales flared wild and panicked. The sword's body bloated, stretched, cracked along its length like overfilled pottery. What? Samehada! Kisame yanked the sword back. Too late. Samehada burst. The living weapon detonated, not in fire or light, but in a wet, crackling implosion of overfed scales and ruptured chakra channels. Pieces of sentient sword scattered across the waterlogged battlefield, twitching, dying, scales going dull and gray. Kasame stared at the hilt in his hand. Empty, broken. The partner he'd carried for 20 years was gone. Impossible. Naruto was in front of him. One step, sand displacement. His right hand closed around Kasame's face, 5 fingers pressed against blue skin. The drain began. Kasame was a monster, half shark. Chakra reserves that rivaled a Biju. A body designed for water, for pressure, for surviving in environments that would crush normal humans. It made no difference. His skin tightened first. The blue faded, washing out like dye and bleach, going pale, then gray, then the color of ash. His gills, the breathing slits along his jaw that marked him as something more than human, clamped shut as the fluid inside them was pulled out through Naruto's palm. They cracked, dry, sealed forever. His eyes bulged. The moisture behind them fled. The whites went yellow. His pupils dilated, and then the lenses fogged as the vitreous humor was consumed. His teeth, those rows of shark teeth, sharp and proud, loosened. His gums receded. 3 teeth fell out, bouncing off Naruto's wrist, hitting the wet ground and turning to powder on impact. His muscles deflated. The massive arms, the chest like a barrel, the legs that had held him upright through decades of killing, all of it contracted. Skin wrapped around bone with nothing between them. His Akatsuki cloak hung like a tent on a scarecrow. 6 seconds. Kisame Hoshigaki, the tailless-tailed beast, the monster of the mist, one of the deadliest men alive, hit his knees. His mouth was open, but no sound came out because his throat had dried to leather. His body weighed maybe 40 pounds. He looked like something pulled from a tomb. Naruto released him. Kisame fell forward, face first into the mud. He didn't move again. Itachi watched. His Sharingan recorded every frame, every detail, the speed, the scale, the absolute, irreversible finality of what had just happened to his partner. Kisame, a man Itachi respected, a man who could fight Biju, had lasted less than 30 seconds. Itachi's eyes shifted. 3 Tomoe became the pinwheel of the Mangekyo. Tsukuyomi. The Genjutsu was instant. Itachi's strongest weapon, a technique that compressed 72 hours of mental torture into a single second, a world he controlled absolutely, where pain and time were his to command. The Mangekyo locked onto Naruto's eyes, contact. The Tsukuyomi engaged, and found nothing. Itachi's mental projection, the dark space, the crosses, the red moon, formed around emptiness. There was no mind to trap. There was no consciousness to torture. There was sand. 1 billion grains of sand, each one identical, each one containing a fragment of awareness spread so thin that no genjutsu could gather it into a target. A logia body was sand all the way through, and sand didn't dream. The Tsukuyomi collapsed. Itachi felt it, the whiplash of a technique that had never failed suddenly finding no purchase. His left eye burned, blood welled at the corner. Naruto hadn't moved, hadn't flinched. The genjutsu had passed through him like wind through a sieve. Genjutsu requires a brain to effect, Naruto said. When I choose, my body has none. Every grain thinks independently. There's nothing for your eyes to grab. Itachi's jaw tightened. The Mangekyo spun. Amaterasu. Black fire erupted from his right eye. The flames of the sun goddess, fire that burned until its target was ash, fire that consumed anything and everything, like fire that had never been extinguished by any means. The Amaterasu hit Naruto's chest and burned. It burned sand. It consumed sand. Black flames crawled across golden grains, devouring them, spreading along Naruto's torso. For 1 second, it looked like a hit. Then Naruto let the burning sand fall away. The grains that were on fire simply detached from his body, a layer of sand, a few millimeters thick, dropping to the ground, still wreathed in black flame. His body reformed from the layer beneath, fresh, clean, untouched. The Amaterasu burned a pile of sand on the ground. It would burn until the sand was gone, but sand was just rock, broken small enough to be patient, and patience was something Amaterasu couldn't outrun. Your fire needs something to consume, Naruto said. I gave it a sacrifice, a few thousand grains. I have billions. He stepped forward. 1 step, 2. Itachi launched a second Amaterasu. Naruto shed the burning layer before it could spread. Step. Shed. Shed. A trail of black burning sand piles marking his path like footprints in a very particular kind of hell. 3 steps from Itachi, Naruto reached out and caught the Uchiha's wrist. The drain hit Itachi like a collapsing building. His body was already dying. The illness, the unnamed, untreatable disease eating his lungs and his chakra network from the inside, had been killing him for years. He was running on borrowed time, held together by willpower and medication, and the stubborn refusal to die before Sasuke was ready. Naruto's drain accelerated the timeline. Itachi felt decades compress into seconds. His skin pulled tight around his bones. His lungs seized, already scarred, already damaged, now losing the last of the fluid that kept them functional. He coughed blood. The blood evaporated before it left his lips, like drying to red dust on his chin. His Mangekyo flickered. The Tomoe slowed. His last resort. The only thing left. Susanoo. The spectral warrior erupted from Itachi's body. Massive, red, burning with ethereal fire. The Totsuka blade materialized in one hand. The Yata mirror formed in the other. The ultimate offense and the ultimate defense. A technique that drained life force to maintain, and that Itachi, already drained, already dying, could sustain for maybe 10 seconds. The Susanoo's free hand swatted Naruto away. The impact would have killed a normal person. Naruto's body separated into sand at the contact point, scattered and reformed 20 feet back. Itachi ran. He gathered what was left of his chakra. The Susanoo flickered around him. 2 seconds of existence. 3, enough to buy him distance. He launched himself into the trees. Moving at speed that cost him months of the life he had left, he ran because Kasame was dead. He ran because Tsukuyomi was useless. He ran because Amaterasu was useless. He ran because the Susanoo was burning through the last reserves of a dying man. And even it wouldn't be enough. Itachi Uchiha, the genius of the Uchiha clan, the Anbu captain at 13, the man who'd faced the third Hokage and lived, was running from a fight for the first time in his life. Naruto watched him go. The trees swallowed the Uchiha's retreating form. The Susanoo's glow faded into the canopy like a dying star. He could have chased, could have ended it. The sand would have caught Itachi within a mile. Desert Girasole would have turned the forest floor to quicksand beneath the Uchiha's feet. But Itachi, alive and running, served a purpose. The report he'd bring back to the Akatsuki would be worth more than his corpse. Naruto looked down at Kisame's desiccated body, then at the broken remains of Samahada, then at the trail of Amaterasu burning sand piles that stretched across the battlefield like a constellation. He lit a cigar, took a drag, spoke to the empty air, knowing that the Akatsuki's surveillance methods, whatever they were, would carry his words back to the man behind the curtain. Tell your leader I'm not a Jinchuriki, I'm a king, and kings don't get captured. He exhaled smoke. It mixed with the steam rising from the destroyed riverbank. They conquer. In a hidden location far away, Nagato sat in his walking machine and watched through the eyes of the animal path. The shared vision from the paths, relayed to him through Itachi's report, delivered by a half-dead Uchiha who'd barely made it to the nearest safe house, painted a picture that reorganized every plan Nagato had made in the last decade. Kisame was dead, gone in 6 seconds. A man with chakra reserves rivaling a Biju, destroyed like Kindling, Tsukuyomi, one of the most powerful genjutsu ever created, had been rendered meaningless by a body that simply chose to have no mind. Amaterasu, the inextinguishable black flame of the gods, had been treated like a mild inconvenience. And the drain, the dehydration ability that didn't care about chakra reserves or bloodline limits or techniques or defenses, it just consumed, endlessly, irresistibly. Like the desert itself had decided to eat you and you simply did what the desert wanted. Nagato was silent for a long time. Konan stood beside him. She'd watched the report. She'd seen Itachi's face, the face of a man whose unshakable composure had been replaced by something raw and animal. Fear. The Uchiha prodigy was afraid. The Nine-Tails host, Konan said. He's more than that. Nagato's voice was a whisper. The Rinnegan eyes, the eyes of a god, stared at nothing. He's something that shouldn't exist. A body made of sand, a power that drains life itself, and a mind that has been outmaneuvering us for 3 years without us realizing it. What do we do? Nagato closed his eyes. We adjust. He didn't say what Konan already knew, that adjust meant survive. That the Akatsuki's grand plan had just been given an expiration date by a 16-year-old in a fur coat who turned their best into dust and jokes in the span of 30 seconds. The web went public 6 weeks later. Naruto didn't reveal Baroque works all at once. That would have been crude, wasteful, the kind of move a brute makes when he wants the world to flinch. Naruto didn't want to flinch. He wanted a realization. The slow, creeping, stomach-dropping understanding that the ground you're standing on belongs to someone else and has for longer than you want to admit. He let 3 threads show. In Suna, the Wind Daimyo's personal guard, the 12 samurai who protected the Lord for a decade, were revealed as Baroque Works agents, all 12. The report landed on the daimyo's desk at breakfast. It included a photograph of each guard receiving payment, a transcript of their weekly reports to Naruto's network, and a polite note suggesting that the daimyo reconsider his position on several trade agreements. The daimyo spilled his tea. Then he signed the agreements. In the Land of Fire, the National Treasury's quarterly audit uncovered a financial anomaly. A single shipping company based in Wave Country had been moving money through 17 intermediary accounts, skimming fractions of fractions from import tariffs, accumulating a war chest that was, by conservative estimate, larger than Konoha's annual military budget. The shipping company was the one Naruto had taken from Gato 8 years ago. The bridge builder's bridge had become the spine of a trade network that now connected Wave to 7 nations. And every coin that crossed that bridge paid tribute to the Desert King. In the Land of Water, Mei Terumi's newly stabilized government received an intelligence packet proving that 3 members of her advisory council were double agents, 2 working for remnants of the old regime, 1 working for a foreign power. The packet arrived via Ice Mirror, delivered by Haku personally, with the implication that Baroque Works had known about these traitors longer than Mei had known these people. Mei fired the 3 advisors. She promoted the intelligence officer Haku recommended. She took a long drink of sake that night and stared at the ceiling and thought about the 16-year-old who held her nation's leash with a golden hook. The shinobi world scrambled. Emergency meetings, internal investigations, purges of suspected Baroque Works agents that destroyed more trust than they restored. Because when you start accusing your own people of being compromised, everyone becomes a suspect. Alliances frayed. Intelligence sharing agreements collapsed. Villages pulled inward, suspicious of each other, suspicious of themselves, which was exactly what Naruto wanted. A divided enemy is an employee who hasn't been given his contract yet. Baroque Works opened its doors. Recruitment went public or semi-public. Whispers, offers, messages that appeared on desks and pillows and bathroom mirrors, written in sand that dissolved after being read. High-level shinobi received invitations. Missing nin received pardons, conditional on service. Merchants received investment proposals that were too profitable to refuse. Politicians received folders containing things they'd rather keep private. Some refused. Their refusals were noted, filed, and stored for future leverage. Some accepted. They were welcomed into the machine, given numbers, given purpose, given the understanding that the Desert King rewarded loyalty with wealth and betrayal, with the kind of death that archaeologists found 10,000 years later and couldn't explain. In the Land of Wind, in the underground fortress that served as Baroque Works headquarters, Naruto sat on his throne and reviewed personnel files. The organization had grown from the original 5 to over 400. Agents in every major nation, assets in every major market, information channels that could tell him what the Raikage had for breakfast and how many sugars the Tsuchikage put in his coffee. A sand clone entered the throne room. It was carrying a man, a Konoha Jonin, mid-40s, unremarkable face, the kind of shinobi who'd spent a career doing B-rank missions and feeling entitled to respect he'd never earned. The clone set him down. The Jonin stumbled, looked around, saw the throne, saw the agents, saw Naruto. His face went through recognition, then confusion, then the beginning of fear. Uzumaki? The Jonin's voice cracked. They told me I was being recruited for a high-level position. What is? You lived on the 3rd floor of the Konoha residential block on Maple Street, Naruto said. He was looking at a folder, flipping a page. Apartment 3C, directly above Apartment 2C, which was assigned to the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. The Jonin's mouth closed. You threw bottles at a 7-year-old's window on 4 separate occasions. Twice at night, twice during the day. The daytime incidents were witnessed by 6 people. None intervened. Naruto closed the folder, set it aside, looked at the man. You also signed a petition to have the Jinchuriki removed from the residential block. The petition cited safety concerns. The real concern was property values. You were planning to sell your apartment, and the proximity of a demon container was lowering the price. The Jonin's breathing was fast. His hands were shaking. Naruto stood up, walked down the 3 steps from his throne, stood 5 feet from the man. Then he crouched, placed his right palm flat on the stone floor between them. The drain began. A perfect circle of gray, cracked, dead stones spread from Naruto's palm. The color leached from the rock. The moisture fled. Microfractures spiderwebbed outward in concentric rings. The circle expanded, 2 feet, 4 feet, 6 feet, and stopped, 2 inches from the Jonin's toes. The man looked down, at the boundary line, at the dead earth on one side and the living stone on the other, at the 2 inches that separated him from the same fate. He looked up at Naruto. Naruto's eyes were blue and ancient, and they held the memory of every bottle, every shout, every cold night spent listening to glass break and laughter follow. "You threw bottles at a 7-year-old and thought nothing of it," Naruto said. "I thought about it every single day." He stood up. The circle of dead stone remained, a scar in the floor that would outlast them both. "Kuhahaha, get out of my sight. The only reason you're still breathing is because corpses attract attention." The Jonin left. He was escorted to the border of Wind Country by 2 agents who said nothing the entire journey. He made it back to Konoha. He resigned from active duty. He moved out of Maple Street. He took a job at a civilian supply depot on the edge of town. He never slept well again. For the rest of his life, every time he closed his eyes, he saw the circle, the gray stone, the 2 inches. And he understood, with the kind of clarity that only comes from staring at your own grave, that those 2 inches had been a choice, and the person who'd made it could unmake it any time he wanted. The Kiri operation launched on a moonless night. The land of water was an island nation wreathed in mist and old blood. For decades, the bloody mist policy had turned the village into a slaughterhouse. Kekkei Genkai users hunted, children forced to kill their classmates to graduate, a culture of violence maintained by a Mizukage who was, as Naruto now knew, a puppet being pulled by strings from the outside. Yagura, the 4th Mizukage, the 3 Tails Jinchuriki, was being controlled. A genjutsu, powerful, persistent, laid over his mind like a fog, turned the man into an automaton who carried out orders from a master he'd never met. The source of the genjutsu was a mystery that Naruto's intelligence network had spent 2 years trying to unravel. They'd narrowed it to a Sharingan user. The implications were disturbing. But the who could wait. The what was clear. Kiri needed to fall. And Naruto was the one who'd push it. The rebellion had been armed and organized for a year. Baroque works had funneled weapons, medicine, intelligence, and tactical advisors to the resistance fighters. The Kekkei Genkai clans who'd survived the purges, the loyalists who'd turned against the regime, the ordinary people who'd simply had enough. Mei Terumi led them. She was brilliant, fierce, and a dual Kekkei Genkai user, lava release and boil release, which made her the most powerful person in the rebellion by a significant margin. She was also smart enough to know who was really pulling the strings. "You've armed us, trained us, and given us every advantage," Mei said the night before the battle. They were in a cave on the eastern coast. Torchlight played across her face. "But you're here in person, which means there's something you want that the rebellion can't get on its own." "The Mizukage," Naruto said. He was leaning against the cave wall, cigar smoke drifting upward. "Yagura is being controlled. When we remove him, we need to do it cleanly. If the 3 Tails breaks free in the middle of the battle, it complicates things. And you can contain a tailed beast. I've been containing one for 16 years. One more won't be a challenge." Mei studied him. The coat, the hook, the eyes that saw right through people and weighed what they found. She was 31 years old, and she'd survived the bloody mist, and she'd killed men twice her size, and she'd never met anyone who made her feel as completely, transparently evaluated as this boy did. "After we win," she said, "what do you want from Kiri?" "A partnership, favorable trade terms, intelligence cooperation, the kind of arrangement where both sides profit. And if I refuse, you won't." She held his gaze for a long time. Then she smiled. "You're a terrifying person, Naruto-kun." "Kuaha, flattery, Mizukage-san. I prefer inevitable." The battle began at dawn. The rebels hit Kiri from 3 sides, east, south, and through the underground waterways that Haku's ice mirrors had mapped over the past year. The loyalist forces were large but demoralized, held together by fear of Yagura rather than conviction. When the first wave of rebels broke through the southern gate, half the garrison surrendered within the hour. The other half fought. And they fought hard, because the bloody mist had produced killers the way factories produce weapons, efficiently, Consistently, and without regard for what was lost in the process, the 7 swordsmen of the mist met the rebel advance at the central bridge. 6 of them. 6 legendary warriors carrying 6 legendary blades, each one capable of destroying a small army. Zabuza had been the 7th once. Now he was on the other side of the field, Kubikirabocho in hand, fighting his way toward the people who'd replaced him. The swordsmen formed a line across the bridge. The rebels of Mei's forces spread out, trying to find ways around, but the bridge was the choke point, the only path to the Mizukage's tower. Naruto walked to the front line. The rebels parted for him the way water parts for a hot knife. He stopped at the bridge entrance, looked at 6 swordsmen standing shoulder to shoulder, blades drawn, killing intent thick enough to taste. 6 swords, he said. He cracked his neck, rolled his shoulders. The coat flared. How nice! Mangetsu Hozuki stood at the center. The man was a phenomenon. A shinobi who could turn his entire body into water, who had mastered all 7 swords of the mist, who was considered the greatest swordsman of his generation. His body rippled as he spoke, the water form shifting between solid and liquid. You're the one they call the Desert King. Mangetsu's voice had the consistency of a stream flowing over rocks. I've heard the stories. Sand, dehydration, immune to physical attacks. He raised his blade, Hiramekare, the twin-bladed sword, chakra humming along its edge. Let's see if the stories are true. 3 swordsmen charged simultaneously, Jinpachi with Shibuki, the explosive sword, Jinin with Kabutowari, the blunt sword and axe combination, Kushimaru with Nuibari, the needle sword, trailing razor wire. Jinpachi swung Shibuki. The explosive tags embedded in the blade detonated on contact with Naruto's chest. The blast was enormous, fire and concussive force and shrapnel tearing through a 10-foot radius. The smoke cleared. Sand hung in the air where Naruto's torso had been. It reformed, whole, untouched. Desert Girasoli. The bridge beneath the 3 swordsmen's feet transformed. Stone and wood and iron, all of it became sand. Loose, flowing, hungry sand that opened like a mouth and swallowed everything standing on it. Jinpachi went under first, his explosive sword detonating uselessly beneath the surface, the blast muffled by 100 feet of compressed grains. Jinin tried to jump. The sand caught his ankles and pulled him down with a sound like grinding teeth. Kushimaru threw Nuibari at Naruto in a last desperate strike, the needle sword trailing its wire like a fishing line. The sword passed through Naruto's head. His skull separated into sand at the entry point and reformed behind the blade. The wire followed uselessly. Kushimaru sank. The sand closed over his head. The struggling stopped. 3 swordsmen, buried. The bridge, or what had been a bridge, was now a pit of golden sand 50 feet across and deep enough that the bottom was a guess. The remaining 3 swordsmen stared. Amiyuri Ringo, the woman with Kiba, the twin lightning swords, took a step back. Lightning arced between her blades. Her eyes were wide. Fuguki Suikazan, the massive man carrying Samahada's predecessor, a scaled blade that shared the original's hunger, gripped his weapon tighter. His jaw worked beneath his bulk. And Mangetsu, the waterman, who looked at the pit of sand that had swallowed 3 of his comrades in 4 seconds and understood, with the clarity of someone who'd mastered 7 legendary weapons and still knew when he was outclassed, that this was going to end badly. Sables. The sandstorm erupted from the pit. It didn't build, it detonated. A wall of spinning, grinding, stripping sand that expanded outward at 60 miles per hour, filling the air, choking visibility, scouring everything it touched down to raw material. Amiyuri's lightning swords tried to cut through it. Lightning arced into the sand and grounded harmlessly, a billion tiny conductors distributing the charge into nothing. The sand hit her. Her armor lasted 1 second before the friction stripped it. Her skin lasted 2 seconds after that. She screamed once, and then the sand was in her lungs, and the scream became silence. Fuguki swung his scaled blade into the storm. The sword ate chakra, pulled it from the sand, tried to absorb it. The same mistake Samahada had made in the Land of Rivers. The blade swelled, the scales flared, the weapon cracked along its length and detonated in Fuguki's hands. The blast stripped the flesh from his palms. He went to his knees. The sand finished the job, encasing him from toe to crown, compressing, condensing, desert Anciero. When it released, what fell to the ground was less than what had stood there. Mangetsu remained. The water man had dissolved his body into liquid form and let the sandstorm pass through him. Water flowed between the grains, reforming behind the storm, taking shape on the far side. He was shaking. His water body rippled with instability. But he was alive. Impressive, Naruto said. The sandstorm died around him. He stood in the center of the devastation. 5 swordsmen gone, 1 remaining, the bridge erased, the landscape rewritten. A water body. You let the sand pass through you the way I let physical attacks pass through me. Mangetsu reformed fully. Hiramakare in his hands. We're the same then. We're nothing alike. Naruto walked toward him, each step deliberate. You turn to water because you're afraid of being solid. I turn to sand because solid is beneath me. Water beats sand, everyone knows that. Everyone is wrong. Naruto lunged. His right hand closed around Mangetsu's face, or where his face was, because the moment Naruto touched him, Mangetsu liquefied. Water flowed around Naruto's fingers, trying to escape, trying to reform elsewhere. Naruto's grip tightened, and the water screamed. The drain pulled moisture from water itself. An impossible paradox, dehydrating water. Except Mangetsu wasn't just water, he was chakra-infused water, a living liquid, and living things in any form contained the spark that Naruto's ability consumed. Mangetsu's water body began to thicken, to congeal. The free-flowing liquid turned viscous, then gelatinous, then solid. His face reformed involuntarily, the body trying to become human again because the water holding it together was leaving and flesh was all that was left. He screamed with a mouth that had reformed just so it could express the agony. His skin appeared, pale, trembling, wet, and immediately began to crack. His water body's greatest advantage became its greatest vulnerability. He had more moisture to lose than a normal person, which meant the drain lasted longer, which meant he felt every second of it. His body collapsed inward, skin over bones, hair falling out in wet clumps that dried to dust before they hit the ground. His eyes sank. His lips pulled back from his teeth in a rictus that might have been a scream, or might have been a grin, or might have been the last expression of a man who realized at the very end that water and sand had never been equals. Naruto dropped him. The body hit the sand and lay still, light as paper, dry as the desert that had claimed it. 6 swordsmen. Done. Naruto looked at the Mizukage's tower, visible through the clearing mist. Phase 2 of Phase 2, he said, and walked toward the tower. Yagura met him at the top. The 4th Mizukage was small, child-sized, almost a grown man trapped in the body of a boy, staff in hand, 3 tails churning inside him, and eyes that were flat and empty, and directed by a will that wasn't his own. The fight was brief. Yagura attacked with water. A tidal wave pulled from the ocean itself, channeled through the tower, filling the corridor. Naruto walked through it, his sand body parting the flood, his hand reaching for the Mizukage's face. Desert Anciero. Sand wrapped around Yagura, encased him. The 3 tails roared, a surge of Biju chakra that cracked the cocoon from inside. Naruto reinforced it, compressed, tighter, denser. Layer after layer of sand, like each one harder than the last, each one pressing the Biju's chakra back down into its container. Through the cocoon, Naruto's right hand found Yagura's forehead. He felt it, the Genjutsu, a foreign presence, threaded through the Mizukage's chakra network like a vine strangling a tree. Sharingan-based, powerful, he drained it. The Genjutsu was a construct of chakra. Naruto's drain consumed chakra-based constructs the way fire consumed paper. The foreign energy dried up. The thread snapped. The vine withered and crumbled and blew away in a wind that only existed at the cellular level. Yagura blinked. His eyes, empty for years, directed by a puppet master who'd stolen his will, came alive. Confusion, pain, recognition of the cage of sand around him, and then, behind the confusion, the crushing weight of memory. Every order he'd given, every purge he'd authorized, every child who died under the bloody mist policy that he'd enforced while screaming inside his own skull. Yagura's voice was raw, damaged, the voice of a man waking from the worst nightmare ever dreamed. You were controlled, Naruto said. It wasn't your fault, but the consequences are yours to carry. He released the sand. Yagura fell. The rebels found him there, kneeling, weeping, the most powerful man in Kiri, broken by the realization of what he'd done while someone else wore his hands. The war ended within hours. Loyalist forces surrendered when word spread that the Mizukage had fallen. The bloody mist was over. Mei Terumi stood in the Mizukage's office that evening. Naruto stood across from her. Between them, a treaty, written in ink and sand, and the unspoken understanding that the woman taking the hat was doing so with a partner she'd never chosen. Kiri will prosper under your leadership, Naruto said. The trade agreements will benefit both parties. Your navy protects the sea routes. My network fills them with commerce. Everyone profits. And your agents in my government will remain. They're there to help. Think of them as consultants. Mei signed the treaty. Her pen moved with the certainty of a woman who'd chosen the lesser evil and made peace with the decision. You're going to rule the world, aren't you? She said. I'm gonna fix it. The ruling part is just a side effect. Kuhaha. He left Kiri the next morning. Behind him, a nation was reborn. Under him, because every rebirth needed a foundation, Baroque Works had gained its first official territory. A nation that owed its freedom to the Desert King and would remember that debt in every trade agreement, every intelligence report, every vote at every summit for the rest of its existence. 2 years passed. 2 years of expansion, consolidation, and the relentless, grinding advancement of an empire that grew the way deserts grew, by consuming what was green and leaving something harder in its place. Baroque Works reached into 23 countries. The agent count passed 600. Trade monopolies in 3 major industries, a private military force composed of missing 9 and defectors and loyalists who'd chosen the winning side early. Naruto was 18. He'd stopped looking like a boy. He looked like what he was, a king in exile, building his kingdom piece by piece, waiting for the moment to step into the light. The moment came courtesy of a man who called himself a god. Pain's assault on Konoha happened on a Tuesday. The 6 paths descended from the sky like judgment-given form, 6 bodies, 1 will, the Rinnegan blazing in every pair of eyes. They hit the village with the force of a natural disaster. Buildings collapsed, streets cratered. Shinobi who'd spent their lives training for war found themselves facing something that war hadn't prepared them for. The animal path summoned creatures that dwarfed buildings. The Asura path launched missiles from its body, arms unfolding into cannons, chest plates opening to reveal arsenals. The Preta path absorbed every jutsu thrown at it. The human path tore souls from bodies with a touch. The Naraka path invoked the King of Hell, a massive, demonic head that judged truth from lies and consumed the losers, and the Deva path stood in the center of it all. Yahiko's body, Nagato's strongest weapon, the path of God that pushed and pulled the world itself. Konoha fought. They fought hard. Kakashi went down first. The Deva Path's Shinratsu caught him mid-combat and drove him through 3 buildings. He survived. Barely. Sakura healed the wounded, hands glowing green, tears streaming, refusing to stop even as the ground shook and the sky filled with dust. Tsunade pushed herself to the breaking point. Strength of 100 seal burning through her reserves, punching through summons, shielding civilians. It was a war condensed into a single hour. And Konoha was losing. Then the Deva path rose above the village, hundreds of feet, a black sphere forming above its raised hands. The air itself bending inward, gravity warping, the prelude to something that would end the battle by ending the battlefield. Shinra Tensei. The push hit Konoha, all of it. The entire village, buildings, streets, monuments, the very earth, was compressed downward and outward in a sphere of absolute force. The village that had stood for 100 years was flattened in a single second. A crater, half a mile wide, 100 feet deep, opened where the heart of Konoha had been. Thousands were buried. Hundreds died on impact. The Hokage monument cracked. The academy collapsed. The hospital, Sakura's hospital, where she'd been healing the wounded, folded inward like a house of cards kicked by a giant. Dust. Silence. The groaning of a civilization brought to its knees. And then, from the edge of the crater, from the tree line to the south, from the direction of wind country, the sand came. It rolled in like a tide, golden, dense, endless. A carpet of grains that covered the ground and kept coming, filling the crater's edges, climbing the rubble, spreading across the destroyed landscape with purpose and direction, and the unmistakable signature of something that was alive. Naruto Uzumaki walked through the ruined south gate of Konoha. His coat billowed, his cigar trailed smoke. His hook caught the light of fires that were still burning in the wreckage. He looked at the crater, at the devastation, at the smoking ruins of the village that had hated him and housed him and driven him into the desert, and still, somehow infuriatingly, against every rational calculation, contained things he'd invested in: his intelligence network, his embedded agents, his safe houses, his information caches, his carefully placed pieces buried in the structure of a village that this so-called god had just stomped flat. Naruto was angry. He'd been annoyed before, inconvenienced, mildly irritated by the incompetence of his enemies and the slowness of his allies. But this, the wholesale destruction of assets he'd spent years placing, was something else. The Diva Path descended. It saw him. The Rinnegan focused. The Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, Pain's voice echoed from the Diva Path's throat. "You've finally come. You've destroyed my investments." Naruto's voice was cold iron wrapped in sand. "That's going to cost you." The six paths converged from all directions. 6 bodies, 6 sets of Rinnegan, 6 distinct threat profiles, all directed by a single mind that believed itself to be divine. The Asura Path attacked first. Its arm unfolded, metal plates revealing a cannon barrel that charged with blue-white chakra. The blast would have leveled a building. It hit sand. Naruto hadn't raised his hand. The sand responded on its own, a wall rising from the ground between him and the blast, absorbing the energy, dispersing it through a billion grains. The wall collapsed. Naruto was already moving. He appeared in front of the Asura Path. Sand teleportation. His body breaking apart and reforming 100 feet from where he'd stood, his right hand pressed against the Asura Path's chest. The body was mechanical underneath. Modified. Weapon systems and reinforced bones and chakra conduits running through artificial tissue. It had less moisture than a normal body, less life to drain. Naruto drained it anyway. The mechanical components seized. The chakra conduits dried, the fluid inside them evaporating, the channels cracking. The organic tissue, what little there was, shriveled. The Asura Path's eyes went dark. Its weapons arm locked in the half-extended position. The body folded at the joints and hit the ground like a marionette with cut strings. The human path lunged from behind. Its hand reached for Naruto's head. The soul extraction technique, the ability to tear a spirit from a body with a single grip. The hand passed through Naruto's skull. Sand. The grains scattered around the human path's fingers and reformed to the left. The path's hand closed on nothing. "You can't take the soul of something that's in every grain," Naruto said. He was beside the human path now, his hook pressed against its throat. There's no single point to grab. He pulled the hook sideways. The golden edge, sharper than steel, harder than diamond, opened the human path's throat from ear to ear. The body dropped. The animal path raised its hands. Summoning seals blazed. 3 creatures appeared. A massive chameleon, a multi-headed dog, and a giant bird. Each one bigger than a house. Each one charging at Naruto from a different direction. Sable's Pasado. The air became sand. A sphere of compressed grains, dense as iron, spinning at 300 miles per hour, expanded from Naruto's position outward. It hit the chameleon first. The creature's body crumbled, skin stripping, muscle desiccating, bones turning to chalk. It collapsed in mid-charge, reduced to a pile of dry remains that the wind scattered. The multi-headed dog hit the Sable's Pasado and fared worse. Each head that grew from the severed stumps met the same fate. Dried, stripped, turned to dust before it could fully form. The regeneration that made the creature immortal became its torment, each new head living just long enough to die again. The bird banked hard, trying to climb above the storm. Naruto looked up. Desert La Spada. 20 blades of compressed sand erupted from the ground, angled upward, fanning out like the fingers of a god reaching for the sky. They caught the bird at altitude. 12 of them hit. The creature came apart in sections, each piece drying and crumbling as the sand consumed the moisture from its summoned flesh. Feathers drifted down like gray snow. The animal path stood alone. Naruto reached it in one step. His hand found its face. The drain took 4 seconds. Another Rinnegan body dropped. The Preta path was smarter. It hung back. Its ability was absorption. It ate chakra, ninjutsu, anything energy-based that was thrown at it. In theory, it was the perfect counter to a user who relied on a chakra-heavy ability. In theory. "Come and absorb this," Naruto said. He raised his right hand. Sand swirled around it, dense, golden, humming with enough energy to power a village. The Preta path charged, hands outstretched. Absorption active. It grabbed Naruto's arm and it drank. Just like Samahata had. Just like every absorber who'd ever tried to eat the desert. The Preta path pulled chakra from Naruto's sand body, and the chakra came endlessly, overwhelmingly, a fire hose aimed into a teacup. The body swelled. Its eyes bulged. Its chakra channels overloaded, burned, burst. But Naruto didn't wait for the overload. While the Preta path was drinking, he grabbed its wrist with his left hand, the hook locking around the joint, and drained it from the opposite direction. Absorption from one side, dehydration from the other. The Preta path's body couldn't reconcile the two forces. It seized, cracked. The skin aged 50 years in 2 seconds, wrinkled, spotted, dry as parchment. The body crumpled. The Naraka path emerged from the rubble 50 feet away. The King of Hell rose behind it. Enormous, demonic, its mouth gaping, its tongue lolling, the judgment mechanism of a god's technique. The King of Hell's mouth opened wide. A pulling force, like gravity aimed at the soul, reached for Naruto. Naruto walked into it. His body entered the King of Hell's mouth. The massive teeth closed around him. The judgment began. Truth, lies, the weighing of a soul's honesty against its sins. Inside the mouth, Naruto turned to sand. 1 billion grains, dispersing through the King of Hell's throat, its esophagus, its impossible spiritual anatomy. The judgment mechanism tried to evaluate each grain individually. Each grain told a different truth. Each grain was a separate entity in a unified whole simultaneously. The paradox overloaded the system. Naruto reformed inside the King of Hell's throat. His hand pressed against the spiritual flesh from within. Desert Spada. The blade erupted from inside the King of Hell's neck, outward. The spiritual entity's head separated from its body. The cut clean, absolute, the sand consuming the moisture from the spiritual flesh as it passed. The King of Hell collapsed. The Naraka path collapsed with it. The body, going limp as its source of power, was destroyed from the inside. 5 paths down. 1 remaining. The Diva path stood in the center of the crater, alone. Yahiko's body. The body of a dead friend animated by a living god's will, with its hands at its sides and the Rinnegan burning with the full force of Nagato's remaining power. Impressive, the Deva path said. You've destroyed 5 of my bodies in under 3 minutes. I'll destroy the 6th in 30 seconds. Naruto walked toward it. Sand trailed behind him like a cape. Unless your master wants to talk. I am God. I don't negotiate with. You're a dying man in a wheelchair using dead bodies as puppets. Don't lecture me about divinity. Naruto stopped 10 feet away. You lost 5 tools. You can lose the 6th, or you can listen. Shinra Tensei. The universal push erupted from the Deva path. Point blank. Full power. The force that had flattened Konoha condensed into a directed blast aimed at a single target. The push hit Naruto. His body scattered. 1 billion grains of sand blown outward in a hemisphere of golden dust. The blast passed through him because there was nothing solid to push. Sand didn't resist force. It dispersed. It flowed. It accepted the push and rode it like a wave rides the wind. For 1 second, the air was full of golden mist. Then the mist fell back, grain by grain, rebuilding from the feet up, legs, torso, arms, head. Naruto reformed in the exact same spot, coat settling, hook gleaming, cigar somehow still lit. Gravity-based techniques are remarkable against things that resist, Naruto said. I don't resist, I just come back. He took a step forward. The Deva path used Bansho Tenin, the universal pull, a force that should have dragged Naruto toward it like a magnet pulling iron. Naruto's body went to sand again. The pull passed through. Sand doesn't magnetize, he reformed. Closer, another pull, another dispersion, another reformation. Closer. The Deva path's Rinnegan widened. For the first time, fear cracked through the divine mask. The interval between Shinra Tensei uses was 5 seconds. In 5 seconds, Naruto could reform, close distance, and attack. 5 seconds, Naruto said. He'd counted. That's how long you need between pushes. That's 4 seconds longer than I need. He lunged. Sand teleportation. 1 second. His hand closed around the Deva path's arm. The drain was immediate. Yahiko's body, already dead, already preserved, running on chakra channeled from miles away, began to wither. The skin tightened, the muscles contracted. The Rinnegan dimmed as the chakra sustaining the body was consumed. The Deva path fell. The connection to Nagato was severed. The draining had consumed the chakra thread linking puppet to master. The body hit the ground and lay still. Another dried, empty shell. Far away, in his hidden base in the Rain Village, Nagato screamed. The feedback of 6 bodies being destroyed in 4 minutes, the psychic backlash of 6 simultaneous connections being severed by drain rather than disruption, tore through his already weakened body. He coughed blood, his vision blurred. Conan caught him as he slumped forward in his walking machine. Nagato. Conan's hands were trembling. Paper wings half formed on her back, a reflexive response to seeing the man she devoted her life to in agony. He destroyed them all. Nagato's voice was a whisper. The Rinnegan eyes were dimmer than they'd been in years. All 6, in minutes. The Shinra Tensei did nothing. The absorption did nothing. The judgment did nothing. He coughed again, blood on his chin, blood on his robe. He's not human, Conan. He's the desert wearing a human face. Conan said nothing. She held Nagato's hand and stared at the screen showing the smoking ruins of Konoha and the figure standing alone in the center of the crater, cigar smoke rising, coat flapping in a wind that seemed to exist only for him. In Konoha, or what was left of it, the survivors emerged from the rubble. Shinobi and civilians, dust-covered and bleeding and shell-shocked, climbing from basements and bunkers and the wreckage of their lives. They saw Naruto. Some recognized him. The whisker marks, the blonde hair, the coat and the hook that had become legend in the 3 years since his disappearance. Some didn't recognize him. They just saw a young man standing in a crater surrounded by 6 destroyed bodies in a field of golden sand, and they understood, with the animal part of their brains, the part that knew when to run and when to freeze, that this person was the reason they were still alive. A woman cried. An old man fell to his knees. A child stared with eyes too wide and too young for what they'd seen. Tsunade emerged from the medical bunker. She was wounded, one arm in a sling, her strength of 100 seal depleted. Her face was a map of exhaustion and grief and fury, the face of a woman who'd spent the last hour trying to save everyone and knowing she couldn't. She looked at Naruto, across the rubble, across the crater, across the distance that had grown between them since a 7-year-old walked out of a desert and came back as something else. Naruto looked at her. He dropped his cigar, lit another, took a drag. You still have a village. You're welcome. Smoke curled between them. His voice carried across the silence of a city that had forgotten how to breathe. Next time, maybe have something worth protecting. He turned. He walked away from the crater. Nobody stopped him. Nobody could have. Behind him, Konoha began the long, slow process of putting itself back together. It would take months, years maybe. The buildings could be rebuilt. The dead could be mourned. But the image of the Desert King standing in the ruins, untouched, unbeatable, telling the Hokage that her village owed him, would outlast the reconstruction. It would outlast everything. The second 5 Kage summit convened under very different circumstances. The first summit had been about the Akatsuki. This one had a single item on the agenda. Naruto Uzumaki. Same location, Land of Iron, same table, rebuilt because the first one had been turned to dead wood. Same Kaj, same bodyguards, same tension, multiplied by a factor of 10. The fourth Raikage was the first to speak. His voice filled the room like a thunderclap. He walked into Konoha and dismantled the Akatsuki's attack single-handedly. 6 paths of pain, destroyed in minutes. Do you understand what that means? It means he's stronger than any of us individually, Onoki said. The old Tsuchikage's voice was gravel in bitterness, possibly stronger than all of us combined. Possibly? I slammed his fist on the table. New table, same treatment. He killed Kasame Hoshigaki in 6 seconds. He made Itachi Uchiha retreat. He turned the 7 swordsmen of the mist into dust. He walked through the Shinra Tensei, the technique that flattened a village, like it was a breeze. There's no possibly. He's the most dangerous person alive. Gaara sat with his arms crossed. The youngest Kage. The one who knew, better than anyone in this room, better than anyone alive, exactly what the Desert King was capable of. He still remembered the hand on his cheek, the tears that evaporated, the words that had rewritten his soul. He won't be stopped by force, Gaara said. His voice cut through the argument. I fought him. I brought the full power of the One Tail to bear. He took my sand from me. He took it. My ultimate defense, my absolute offense, my birthright as a Jinchuriki. He stole it mid-attack and used it as his own. Physical confrontation with Naruto Uzumaki is a guarantee of defeat. Mei Terumi sipped her tea. Her expression was composed, unreadable, because she was already in Naruto's pocket, and every word she said in this room was calibrated to serve two masters. Perhaps we should consider what he wants rather than how to destroy him. He wants the world, thundered. He wants order, Mei corrected. His order, which is concerning, certainly, but consider the alternative. The Akatsuki is in retreat. Pain's assault on Konoha has destabilized the organization. Orochimaru is dead or hiding. The trade routes he controls have actually improved commerce in 7 nations. His intervention in Kiri ended a genocide. At the cost of Kiri's independence, Kiri is more independent now than it was under the Bloody Mist. I would know. Tsunade had been silent. She sat with her hands folded and her eyes fixed on a point in the middle distance that only she could see. When she spoke, the room went still. He was my citizen, she said. He was a child in my village, a child we failed, a child who was kidnapped, abandoned in a desert, and came back as this. She closed her eyes. I could list every mistake Konoha made with Naruto Uzumaki. It would take longer than this summit. That's not relevant. I started. It's the only thing that's relevant. Tsunade cut him off. We created him. Every village in this room contributed to what he became. Kumo kidnapped him. Ei's jaw tightened. Suna's instability left a power vacuum he exploited. Gaara's eyes flickered. Kiri's civil war gave him an entire nation. Mei's smile was ice. And Konoha, my village, gave him the motivation. We beat him, starved him, isolated him, drove him into a desert to die, and when he came back stronger than any of us could imagine, we were surprised. She opened her eyes. We're not victims here. We're consequences. The doors opened. Same sand, same golden mist across the floor, same drop in humidity, same cracking of lips and stinging of eyes. Naruto walked in. Same coat, same hook, same cigar, same walk. The unhurried stride of a man who owned the room before he entered it. He sat at the head of the table. The chair that had been left empty this time because Mifune had learned from experience. Kuah! The laugh was a greeting and a challenge and a statement of fact. I hear I'm on the agenda. I'm flattered. Stood up so fast his chair hit the wall. Lightning chakra blazed across his body. The lightning armor, full power, a defensive and offensive technique that made him one of the fastest men alive. I'm gonna end this right now. Launched himself at Naruto. Lightning speed, the kind of velocity that turned a fist into a missile. Desert Unciero. Sand erupted from the floor. It caught a mid-charge, wrapping around his legs, his torso, his arms, climbing his body like vines made of grinding stone. The lightning armor blazed, arcs of electricity tearing through the grains, ionizing them, trying to blast free. The sand tightened. The lightning flickered, because the sand was draining, pulling the moisture from Ei's skin, dehydrating the cells that produced and conducted the lightning chakra. His armor dimmed. His speed dropped. His body stiffened as the water left his muscles and his tendons tightened like old rope. 5 seconds. The 4th Raikage, the fastest Kage alive, the man who'd fought the 8 Tails to a standstill, was on his knees. The desert Unciero holding him immobile. His lightning armor extinguished, his breathing ragged as his body fought dehydration that had advanced his cellular age by 10 years in 5 seconds. Naruto hadn't moved from his chair. Sit down. Ei's bodyguards were frozen. Dari's hand was on his cleaver, but his legs weren't responding. C's sensing ability was screaming conflicting signals. Threat, danger, retreat, fight, surrender, all at once. Naruto released Ei. The sand retreated. The Raikage collapsed forward, catching himself on the table edge, gasping, his skin tight and his lips cracked and his pride bleeding from every pore. He sat down. The room was tomb silent. Gaara's gourd trembled behind his chair. He recognized the technique. He recognized the grip. He recognized the look in Naruto's eyes. The ancient, bottomless evaluation of someone who'd already decided how this would end and was simply waiting for everyone else to catch up. Mei's hidden smile was there, under the surface, the smile of a woman who'd chosen her side months ago and was watching the rest of the world arrive at the same conclusion. Onoki gripped his armrest with hands that had survived 3 wars and 100 battles and had never trembled until now. Tsunade closed her eyes. Naruto leaned forward. He placed a scroll on the table, smaller than the last one but heavier, denser with information. This is Baroque Works' full operational map, he said. Every agent, every asset, every territory, every trade route, intelligence network, and military resource under my control. He let them look, let them absorb the scale. 23 countries, 600 agents, control or influence over 30% of the continent's trade. Intelligence networks that penetrate every government in this room. He paused. You have two options. Fight me and watch everything I've built activate against you simultaneously, or accept what I'm offering. Which is what exactly? Onoki's voice was a whisper. A restructured world. One where power is honest and visible rather than hidden and corrupt. I'll handle the remaining Akatsuki threat. I'll dismantle the underground weapons trade that's been feeding conflicts across the continent. I'll stabilize the regions my network already controls and bring the rest into alignment. In exchange for what? Recognition. A, still on his knees, still gasping, looked up. Recognition? A sovereign territory, official diplomatic status, the right to operate openly rather than from the shadows. Naruto tapped ash from his cigar. I'm going to build a nation. You can be its allies or its obstacles. I prefer allies. Obstacles tend to erode. You want us to bow to a child? A's voice was hoarse, but the anger was still there, buried under the pain and the humiliation. Naruto looked at him. That blue, ancient, unimpressed look. I want you to be smart. That's harder for some of you than others. Anyone else want to have an argument? He looked at each Kaji, one by one, holding each gaze long enough to make them feel the weight of what they were choosing. Silence. Good. Kuhahaha. Let's talk about the future. They talked. For 11 hours. The details were complex. Borders, trade terms, diplomatic protocols, military non-aggression pacts. Naruto had a proposal for every contingency. He'd been writing this treaty for 2 years. Every clause was airtight. Every term was designed to benefit both parties while ensuring that the Desert Kingdom, the name he'd chosen, the name that would go on maps and treaties and history books, was positioned at the center. By midnight, 4 Kage had signed. Gaara first, because he understood. May 2nd, because she'd signed months ago in everything but ink. Tsunade third, because she was tired and because the boy she'd failed was offering a world that might be worth more than the one she'd inherited. Onoki fourth, because 3 wars had taught him that survival sometimes meant bending, assigned last. His hands shook, his pride screamed, but his mind, the mind that had kept Kumo strong through decades of competition, recognized a losing hand when he held one. The Desert King had his recognition. The world turned. Obito Uchiha came for Naruto 3 months after the summit. He came alone, no Akatsuki cloak, no pretense of organization or ideology. Just a man in an orange mask, standing at the edge of the Demon Desert waiting. Naruto felt him arrive. The sand told him, a disturbance at the periphery, a presence that registered and then didn't, flickering between existence and absence like a candle in the wind. He walked out to meet him. Coat, hook, cigar, the usual. They stood 50 feet apart. The desert wind between them carried sand and silence. You've been busy, Obito said. His voice through the mask was deeper than his years, rougher. The voice of a man who'd been wearing someone else's name for so long he'd forgotten the sound of his own. The Akatsuki is in ruins. Pain is defeated. My plans are compromised. Your plans were compromised the moment you decided to hide behind a mask and let other people die for your dream. Naruto lit a cigar. But I'm guessing you didn't come here for a performance review. Obito reached up and tilted his mask, just enough to show one eye, the Sharingan spinning, 3 Tomoe burning red. I came to make an offer. The Eye of the Moon plan. Infinite Tsukuyomi. A genjutsu cast over the entire world. Every person, every creature wrapped in a dream of their deepest desire. A world without pain, without loss, without the cruelty that breaks people like us. People like us? Orphans, outcasts, men who lost everything and had to build something from the ashes. Obito's voice softened. The mask hid whatever his face was doing. You understand, don't you? The world is broken. You've seen it, you've exploited it, but you can't fix it. Human nature won't allow it. Greed, fear, hatred, they always come back. The only solution is to replace reality with something better. Naruto listened. He let the entire pitch play out. Every word, every argument, the philosophical justification for drugging an entire world into unconsciousness and calling it paradise. When Obito finished, the desert was silent. The wind had stopped. Even the sand was still, as if the desert itself was holding its breath, waiting for its king to speak. Naruto took a drag, exhaled, watched the smoke rise and dissipate into the dry air. Kuhahaha! The laugh started low and built. It filled the desert. It echoed off dunes and stone formations and the underground tunnels of Baroque Works' fortress. It was the laugh of a man who'd heard the most ridiculous thing in the world and wanted the world to know it. You want to trap the world in a dream. I want to rule the world that's awake. Naruto dropped his cigar, crushed it under his heel. The difference between us is that I respect my kingdom enough to let it be real. Obito's eye narrowed behind the mask. The Sharingan spun faster. You'd rather let the world suffer? Suffering is the price of existence. A world without it isn't a world. It's a coffin with better lighting. Naruto raised his right hand. Sand stirred at his feet. Dreams without power are just wishes. I stopped wishing at 7 years old. Obito dropped the mask entirely. It fell to the sand and lay there, orange, spiraled. The disguise of a man who'd been hiding from his own grief for 20 years. Beneath it, Obito Uchiha, scarred, half his face the texture of melted wax, Hashirama cell reconstruction, imperfect, grotesque. One Sharingan blazing, the other eye socket holding a Rinnegan that he'd taken from Nagato's cooling body. Then you leave me no choice. Obito activated Kamui. His body shifted, became intangible. The molecules of his form rotated into the pocket dimension that existed between reality and void. The space where Kamui's users were untouchable, where nothing could reach them, where they were ghosts walking through a solid world. He charged. Naruto didn't move. His right hand swept forward. Desert Spada. The blade of compressed sand erupted from the earth and sliced through Obito's position. It passed through his intangible form harmlessly. Obito was already behind Naruto, re-solidifying kunai in hand, driving it toward the Desert King's spine. The kunai passed through sand. Naruto's back separated at the contact point. The grains scattered around the blade and reformed. Two intangibles, two beings that physical attacks couldn't touch. A paradox of combat, two forces that existed outside the normal rules trying to apply those rules to each other. Obito phased through a sable storm. Naruto reformed after a Kamui strike. Obito's chains passed through sand. Naruto's Desert Encierro closed on air where Obito had been. For 30 seconds, they traded blows that landed on nothing. Two ghosts in a desert, fighting a war that the physical world couldn't participate in. Then Naruto stopped. He stood in the center of the battlefield, sand swirling around him, the wind picking up, the temperature dropping as moisture fled the area. He thought. He remembered. In another life, Crocodile's life, there had been opponents who couldn't be touched. Logia users who turned to elements, Paramecia users who warped space, Haki users who could strike the intangible. Kamui was a phasing technique. It sent the body to another dimension. But it had to return. And in the microsecond of resolidification, in the fraction of a heartbeat where Obito shifted from ghost to flesh so he could attack, there was a window. 1 microsecond. That was enough. But there was a better way, a crocodile way. Naruto dispersed. His entire body became sand, finer than dust, finer than air particles. Grains so small they existed at the boundary between matter and energy. The sand spread. It filled the air. It covered the ground. It saturated a sphere 200 feet in diameter, a cloud of golden particles so diffuse they were barely visible. Obito phased into Kamui's dimension. The sand followed. Because the sand was everywhere. It was in the air Obito breathed before he phased. It was on his skin. It was in the folds of his clothing and the creases of his mask. When he shifted to the other dimension, the sand shifted with him, attached at the molecular level, riding the Kamui transition like a stowaway on a ship. Inside Kamui's pocket dimension, the white void where Obito was untouchable, where he'd hidden for decades, where he'd planned the destruction of reality from the safety of unreality. Naruto reformed. Obito spun. His Sharingan blazed. His Rinnegan pulsed. The pocket dimension, his sanctum, his fortress, the one place in all of existence where he was safe, had been breached. "You forget," Naruto said. His voice echoed in the void. "The desert is everywhere, even here." He grabbed Obito's face. Inside the Kamui dimension, there was nowhere to phase to. The dimension was the escape. There was no escape from the escape. The drain began. Obito screamed. The sound bounced off the white walls of his own prison. His Hashirama cells, The reconstructive tissue that had kept his body alive and functional began to dry. The cells, designed to regenerate infinitely, found themselves losing moisture faster than they could replace it. They cracked, they split, they died. His Sharingan flickered, the Tomoe slowed. The Genjutsu potential, the Kamui itself, wavered as the chakra sustaining it was consumed. His Rinnegan dimmed. The concentric circles faded to pale lilac, then gray, then the dull purple of a dying star. His skin tightened across the Hashirama cell side of his face. The reconstructed tissue, already grotesque, became more so. The cells shrank, the surface roughened. What had been smooth, functional scar tissue became something that looked ancient, fossilized, drained of everything that made it alive. Obito tried to collapse the Kamui, to eject them both back to reality. His eye blazed with the last of its power. The space around them warped, bent, fractured. They fell back into the real world. Obito hit the sand first, face down. His body was withered. The left side, the Hashirama side, cracked and dry and flaking. His Sharingan was dull. His Rinnegan was barely functional. The mask lay 3 feet away, empty and irrelevant. Naruto stood over him. The sand settled. The wind died. The desert was silent. Obito rolled onto his back, looked up at the sky through one working eye. His breathing was ragged. Each inhale a rattling gasp, each exhale carrying dust from lungs that were drying from the inside. Obito Uchiha, Naruto said. Kakashi's dead friend. What a waste of an eye. He looked at the Rinnegan, still in Obito's skull, still faintly glowing, still holding the power that Nagato had wielded and Obito had stolen. Long pause. The wind carried sand across Naruto's shoulders. The cigar smoke drifted south. He reached down. His fingers found the edge of the eye socket. Obito tried to resist. A twitch, a flinch, the last reflex of a body that had already lost. Naruto extracted the Rinnegan. The eye came free with a wet sound that the desert immediately dried to silence. He held it up. The concentric circles caught the sunlight. The power inside. The Sage of Six Paths inheritance, the eyes of creation and destruction, hummed against his palm. He considered it, turned it in his fingers, felt the weight of what it represented. A shortcut to godhood, a weapon that could reshape reality, a crown that had driven every person who'd ever worn it to madness or megalomania. He pocketed it. He had people who could use it better. Strategic pieces, assets that would benefit from the Rinnegan's power and serve the Empire's interests. He'd decide later. The right tool in the right hand at the right time. That was how empires were maintained. Obito's eye closed, his body relaxed, unconsciousness took him, the mercy of a brain that had run out of moisture to sustain awareness. Naruto left him alive, broken, depleted, but alive. Because dead men don't answer questions. And Obito Uchiha had 20 years of secrets that Baroque Works interrogation specialists would extract with patience and precision. 2 sand clones carried the body to the nearest safe house. Agent Mr. 5, the former Root operative, was waiting. Get everything, Naruto said. Every ally, every base, every weapon. The Akatsuki dies today. Mr. 5 nodded. And the eye? Naruto looked at the Rinnegan in his palm one more time. Then he sealed it in a scroll and placed it inside his coat. Insurance, he said. The best kind. In the aftermath, Conan found what was left of Obito. Not the body, that was in Baroque Works custody. She found the mask, lying in the sand where it had fallen, orange, spiraled. The face of the man who told her in Nagato that peace could only be achieved through the eye of the moon. She picked it up, turned it over, felt the weight of a lie that had lasted 2 decades. She understood then, fully and finally. The war Nagato had died fighting, the crusade against the shinobi world's injustice, had been engineered by a man in an orange mask who had never cared about their dream, who had used Pain's God complex and Conan's loyalty and the Akatsuki's collected might as tools for a plan that would have erased everything real in favor of a fantasy. Conan crushed the mask. Paper hands, paper strength, the fragments falling to the sand like confetti at a funeral. She walked into the desert, toward the fortress she'd heard about, toward the Desert King, whose intelligence network had already identified her and whose agents were watching from 3 concealed positions. She found Naruto outside the fortress entrance, sitting on a rock, smoking. Conan of the Rain, he said, Pain's partner, former partner. Her voice was paper flat, empty. He's dead. Nagato is dead. Obito used us. The Akatsuki was a lie. I know. I want to join you. Naruto studied her. The paper body, the flower in her hair, the hollowed out look of a woman who'd lost everything she'd believed in and was looking for something to replace it. You were never my enemy, he said. You were always just an obstacle. And now you're useful. He stood. Welcome to Baroque Works, Miss All Sunday. The code name settled on her like a second skin. She bowed, stiffly, the way someone bows when they've never bowed to anyone and are learning what it feels like. What's my assignment? Amigakure, the Rain Village. It's been without leadership since Nagato's death. I need someone to run it, someone who knows the people, the infrastructure, the culture, someone they trust. They trusted pain, and pain was a lie. Then give them something real. Naruto crushed his cigar. I don't deal in dreams, Konan. I deal in results. Amigakure joins the network. Its people get stability. You get purpose. Everyone profits. Konan looked at him for a long time. At the young man who'd done what the Akatsuki couldn't, reshaped the world through power and patience rather than ideology and violence. You're nothing like Nagato, she said. That's the point. The desert kingdom rose from the sand like a memory-made stone. It began in the heart of the demon desert, the same desert where a 7-year-old boy had fallen face first into the earth and been caught by something that remembered him. The same desert where he'd cut off his own hand and replaced it with gold. The same desert where he'd killed his kidnappers and walked west toward a village that had never deserved him. This was where it started. This was where it would stand. The construction was unlike anything the shinobi world had ever witnessed. Naruto didn't hire builders. He was the builder. His sand, the infinite, obedient, living sand that responded to his will the way water responds to gravity, became the material, the tool, and the architect simultaneously. Foundations first, deep, driven into the bedrock beneath the dunes by pillars of compressed sand harder than any material a forge could produce. The pillars were 60 feet deep and 12 feet across, roots for a city that would stand against any storm, any earthquake, any army. Walls next. Rising from the desert floor in real time, grain by grain, layer by layer, the sand compressing and crystallizing under Naruto's will into surfaces smooth as glass and hard as iron. The walls were 40 feet high and 15 feet thick. Golden. The same golden shade as his hook, as his sand, as the desert sun that hung overhead like a crown waiting for a head. The city within the walls was Alabasta reborn. The memories of Crocodile's life. The kingdom he tried to steal. The architecture he'd admired. The engineering he'd studied in preparation for conquest. Poured through Naruto's hands and became real. Wide boulevards lined with sandstone buildings, aqueducts carrying water from underground springs, tapped by sand drills that reached 100 feet below the surface, market squares designed for commerce with covered walkways to shield merchants from the desert sun, a harbor impossible in the middle of a desert, except that Naruto had carved a canal 30 miles long from the kingdom's border to the nearest navigable river, turning landlocked desert into a trading hub. The palace stood at the center, a tower of compressed golden sand, spiraling upward 200 feet, its surface etched with patterns that caught the light and threw it back in fractured beams. Inside, throne room, war room, intelligence center, diplomatic chambers, residential quarters for the highest-ranked agents of Baroque works. The throne itself was sand, living sand. It shifted beneath Naruto when he sat, adjusting to his posture, conforming to his weight, a seat that was literally part of him. The backrest rose 15 feet, tapering to a point that caught the light from the oculus above. The armrests were smooth and wide, designed for a man with a hook to rest comfortably. It took 6 weeks to build. 6 weeks of continuous construction. Naruto's sand clones working around the clock, the desert itself reshaping under his will. When it was done, the city stretched across 3 square miles of what had been empty wasteland, and was now the most impressive architectural achievement the shinobi world had ever seen. The agents came, from every country, through every border, by land and sea and air, some walking, some riding, some arriving through methods that left the border patrols scratching their heads. They came because the summons had gone out, the numbered system activated. Every member of Baroque Works, from the lowest informant to the highest ranked operative, received the same message: come home. They arrived in hundreds. then thousands. The city's population grew from 0 to 10,000 in a month. Agents brought families. Families brought needs. Markets opened. Shops appeared. Schools, actual schools, because a kingdom needs citizens who can read, started teaching. Zabuza arrived third. Because he'd been in Wave wrapping up operations, and because he'd insisted on walking the entire way as a matter of personal stubbornness. He entered the throne room in his old bandages with Kubikira Bocho on his back, and his gaze sweeping the palace like a man seeing a dream he'd never admit to having. Head of military, Naruto said from the throne, the Desert Kingdom's armed forces answer to you. Build me an army that the shinobi world respects. Zabuza grinned. The bandages shifted. You're giving me an army. I'm giving you a purpose. The army is the tool. Kuaha, wait, that's your laugh. Earn your own. Haku arrived the next morning. Ice mirrors materialized in the intelligence center, creating a network of reflective surfaces that allowed instantaneous communication across the continent. The intelligence director's office was cold year-round. Nobody complained. The Suna defector, Agent Mr. 7, took over infrastructure. The aqueducts, the canal, the trade routes, the agriculture projects that were slowly sections of desert green with imported soil and chakra-assisted irrigation. She'd been an engineer before she'd been a spy. Now she was both, building a nation's bones while its heart beat around her. The former root operative, Agent Mr. 5, established the judicial system, courts, laws, enforcement, the structure of a society that operated by rules rather than whims. The irony of a root agent building a legitimate justice system was lost on nobody. He didn't care. He was good at it. Conan managed a Megakure remotely. Paper messages, paper agents, a reign of authority falling on a village that was learning what it meant to be governed by someone who actually cared about outcomes. The nations came next. Gaara arrived first, formally, as the 5th Kazekage, leading a diplomatic envoy from Suna, the first sovereign nation to officially recognize the Desert Kingdom. He walked through the Golden Gates, across the wide boulevard, into the palace, up the stairs to the throne room. Naruto was sitting on the throne, coat draped over the armrest, hook resting against his jaw, cigar trailing a thin line of smoke toward the oculus. 2 former Jinchuriki, 2 former enemies, 2 people who'd been remade by the same desert though in very different ways. Gaara looked at the city, at the throne room, at the sandstone walls and the crystal windows and the precision of every line and curve, at the empire built from nothing by a person he'd once tried to kill. He sat in the chair across from the throne, folded his hands. I used to think power like yours was just destruction, Gaara said. His voice carried the weight of years and a maturity that had been earned through pain. Was I wrong? Naruto looked at him for a long time. The cigar burned between his fingers. The sand beneath his throne stirred, responsive, attentive, alive. Power is just power, kid. What it destroys and what it builds depends entirely on who's holding it. He tapped Ash. Kuhahaha. Gaara signed the recognition treaty. The seal of Suna pressed into wax beside the seal of the Desert Kingdom. 2 sand nations bound by ink and history, and the shared understanding that the strongest bond between allies is mutual respect earned through violence. Kiri recognized the Desert Kingdom the following week. Mei's signature was elegant, and her smile was genuine, and the trade agreements she brought were more favorable than Naruto had expected. She was negotiating from strength, the strength he'd given her. She was smart enough to use it and wise enough to know its limits. The Land of Waves recognized next. The bridge, Tazuna's bridge, now the busiest trade crossing in the region, flew the Desert Kingdom's flag beside its own. Tazuna himself attended the ceremony. The old man cried. He said it was the wind, Amegakure, the land of rivers, the land of tea, the land of hot water. One by one, the smaller nations signed on, some freely, some after their leaders were shown the intelligence files Baroque works had compiled. Some after watching their neighbors prosper under the Desert Kingdom's trade agreements and deciding that pride was a poor substitute for economic growth. The major villages followed, Iwa, Kumo, each one extracting concessions, negotiating terms, trying to preserve autonomy while accepting the reality that the world's power structure had fundamentally shifted. The last holdout was Konoha. It took 2 months longer than the rest. The village was rebuilding. The Hokage position had finally changed. Kakashi Hatake, the sixth Hokage, wearing the hat that Minato had worn, sitting behind the desk that Hiruzen had died defending. Kakashi came to the Desert Kingdom on a spring morning. He wore the Hokage robes over his Jonin uniform. His hair was the same defiant silver. His mask was the same. His eye, both eyes now, the Sharingan had been returned to Obito during the extraction and replaced with a normal prosthetic, was tired in a way that went deeper than sleep could fix. He walked through the gates, through the city, through the palace, up the stairs. Naruto was on the throne, where he always was, where the world had learned to find him. They looked at each other. Kakashi saw the boy. Somewhere beneath the coat and the hook and the cigar and the empire, somewhere in the blue of those eyes and the whisker marks on those cheeks, the ghost of a 7-year-old who'd walked into a classroom with sand in his hair and a hook where his hand should have been. Naruto saw the teacher, the man who'd been late to everything except the realization that his student was something he couldn't contain. The man who'd written 43-page reports and pulled his hand 1 inch closer to his kunai pouch the first time they'd met. "Hokage-sama," Naruto said. "Naruto." Kakashi's voice was even. "Or should I call you something else now?" "Naruto is fine. It's the name I was given. I've decided to keep it." Kakashi sat in the visitor's chair. He looked at the throne room, the sand walls, the crystal oculus throwing diamonds of light across the floor, the guards at the door, former missing Nin, former Anbu, former enemies of every nation, now wearing the numbered coats of Baroque works and serving the Desert King with the kind of loyalty that only comes from being given a second chance by someone who didn't have to give one. Was any of it real? Kakashi asked. The question had been building for years. Since the apartment, since the dust, since the golden grains that caught the moonlight and vanished. Team 7, the missions, the bell test. He paused. Did you actually care about any of us? Naruto took a drag, held it, exhaled. The smoke drifted between them, thin, gray, dissolving into nothing. I cared about the mission, Naruto said. His voice was steady, flat, the voice of a man delivering a verdict. I cared about the objectives. I cared about placing the right pieces in the right positions at the right time. Kakashi didn't move. His expression was hidden behind the mask, but his eye, his single tired human eye, dimmed. But Naruto's voice shifted. 1 degree, 1 fraction of a fraction, like a door cracking open in a wall that everyone had assumed was solid. The morning you showed up 3 hours late and told us about the bells, you said the people who abandon their friends are worse than trash. Kakashi's eye widened. I thought about that. Naruto looked at his hook, at the gold, at the light playing across its surface. I thought about it more than I expected to, more than was useful. He looked at Kakashi, and for 1 second, 1 beat of 1 heart in 1 room in the center of an empire, the Desert King's eyes held something that wasn't strategy or dominance or the cold evaluation of a man who'd lived twice and trusted no one. It was warm, and it was buried so deep that only someone who'd known the boy before the sand would have recognized it. I sent the medicine, Naruto said, to the hospital. After the retrieval mission, Choji, Neji, Kiba, Shikamaru. Kakashi blinked. There was a reason I didn't sign the packages. Naruto tapped ash. The warmth retreated, buried again, sealed behind layers of stone and sand, and the absolute refusal to be vulnerable in a world that had punished vulnerability with bottles through windows. Sentiment is a weakness in an organization like mine, but I've decided that some weaknesses are worth maintaining, in small doses, under strict control. He looked at Kakashi. You were a terrible teacher and a decent human being. In this world, that's rarer than you know. Kakashi stared at him for a long time. Then he laughed. A single, soft, broken sound that might have been a laugh or might have been something else. You sound just like him, Kakashi said. Like who? Your father. The air between them held the weight of that statement. The son who'd never known the man, the student who'd worshipped the master. The bridge between them, fragile, improbable, held together by a handful of words and a memory of medicine delivered without a signature. Kakashi pulled the recognition treaty from his robes, set it on the table between them, signed it. The seal of Konoha, the leaf, the symbol of a village that had created the Desert King through neglect and cruelty, and the specific targeted failure to love a child who needed it, pressed into wax beside the golden hook emblem of the Desert Kingdom. Konoha recognizes the sovereign territory of the Desert Kingdom, Kakashi said. Effective immediately. Effective always, Naruto corrected. Kakashi smiled behind his mask. Or maybe he didn't. With Kakashi, you could never tell. He left. The Hokage robes trailing behind him. The scent of leaves and dog fur and old regret lingering in the throne room for hours. Naruto sat on his throne and smoked and watched the light move across the floor. You don't get to decide what I am, he said to the empty room. I've already decided. The days that followed were full of treaties and ceremonies and the grinding, inglorious work of turning an organization into a government. The numbered system remained, but now the numbers had titles. Mr. 3 became General Zabuza, commander of the Desert Kingdom Armed Forces. Miss Wednesday became Director Haku, chief of the Continental Intelligence Bureau. Mr. 5 became Minister of Justice. Mr. 7 became Minister of Infrastructure. The agents became citizens. The shadows became institutions. The web became a nation. And the world, slowly, reluctantly, with the grudging acceptance of a body learning to live with a new limb, adapted. Trade flourished. The canal brought commerce to the desert, the way veins bring blood to a heart. Ships arrived daily. Caravans from 5 nations crossed the western route. Markets in the capital buzzed with languages from every corner of the continent. The military grew. Zabuza trained soldiers the way he'd been trained. Hard, relentless, with a focus on adaptability and survival that produced fighters who were feared on sight. Missing nin who'd been hunted for years found purpose and structure. Former enemies of every village worked side by side, bound by a loyalty that wasn't to each other, but to the man on the throne who'd given them all a second chance. Intelligence remained Haku's domain. The ice mirrors expanded, a network of reflective surfaces spanning the continent, each one capable of transmitting and receiving information instantaneously. Nothing moved in the shinobi world without Haku knowing about it. Nothing was whispered, plotted, or planned without a report landing on Naruto's desk within hours. The Rinnegan was given to Konan. The decision came after 3 weeks of consideration, 3 weeks of turning the eye in his hands, feeling its power, weighing its potential against its cost. In the end, the choice was strategic. Konan's paper body was the ideal vessel. Her unique physiology allowed her to integrate the eye without the chakra strain that would have killed most users. And Omegakure, with its rainfall and its history of pain, needed a leader who could stand toe-to-toe with any threat. Konan accepted the eye with the gravity of a woman receiving a weapon and a burden simultaneously. The Rinnegan settled into her left socket. The concentric circles blazed. The rain over Omegakure shifted, falling harder, faster, carrying with it the signature of a power that had been passed from god to god and had finally found a vessel who didn't want to be one. Use it for the village, Naruto told her, and for the network. In that order. Understood. The kingdom grew, the world changed, and the Desert King sat at the center of it all, moving pieces, reading reports, signing treaties, and occasionally, rarely, so rarely that his agents whispered about it like a myth, walking the streets of his city alone at night, coat collar turned up, cigar trailing smoke, looking at the buildings and the lights and the people with an expression that nobody could read because nobody was supposed to see it. On those nights, the sand beneath his feet was gentle, warm. The grains hummed a low, constant note, the desert's heartbeat, the song of a power that had crossed dimensions and centuries to find a soul worthy of carrying it. On those nights, Naruto Uzumaki remembered. Both lives, the pirate and the ninja, the warlord and the king, the man who tried to steal a kingdom, and the boy who'd built one from scratch. 2 lives, 1 throne, and the sand carried it all. The final evening came the way all final evenings come, without announcement, without ceremony, just the slow dimming of light and the gradual understanding that something has ended. The recognition ceremonies were complete. Every nation had signed. The map had been redrawn. The Desert Kingdom occupied its place at the center of the shinobi world. A new power, a new nation, a new reality that the old powers had been forced to acknowledge because the alternative was worse than acceptance. Naruto stood on the tallest spire of his city, 200 feet above the sand, above the flags that flew from every tower, golden on black, the hook emblem that had become the most recognized symbol on the continent. Above the streets, where merchants and soldiers and citizens moved in the patterns of a living, breathing nation. Above the walls and the aqueducts and the canal and the desert that stretched to every horizon, the sun was setting. The sky turned the color of embers. The sand caught the light and threw it back in a million shades of gold and amber and rust. He lit a cigar. The flame caught, the paper burned. The smoke rose, thin, gray, curling into the dry air. He looked at everything he'd built, from nothing, from a dying child in a desert, from a pile of golden dust on the floor of a condemned apartment, from the memory of a man who'd lived once and failed and lived again and refused to fail twice. Every grain of sand in the desert below him, every grain in the walls of his city, in the throne of his palace, in the coast-to-coast network that ran from the land of water to the land of earth, was his. Responsive, loyal, alive with a power that the shinobi world still didn't fully understand and probably never would. The world was restructured. The Akatsuki was destroyed. The underground arms trade was dismantled. The trade routes were stable. The nations were aligned. The empire was real and visible and unstoppable. And the boy who'd been beaten and starved and thrown away, the boy who'd crawled across burning sand with split lips and broken chakra and the stubborn, furious refusal to die, was sitting on a throne that the entire world was forced to acknowledge. He took a drag, exhaled. The smoke drifted south, carried by a wind that had been blowing since the day the desert remembered its king. He didn't say anything dramatic. He didn't make a speech. He didn't raise his hook to the sky or issue a proclamation or deliver a final line for history to record. He just sat there, on the highest point of his kingdom, with his coat and his cigar and his golden hook and his blue eyes that had seen two worlds and decided that neither one was good enough and built a third. One laugh, rolling across the sand like distant thunder. Ku-ha-ha! The desert carried it, across the dunes, across the kingdom, across the borders and the nations and the oceans and the continents, across a world that had tried to break a boy and had been rebuilt by the man he became. The sand stirred, the wind blew, the sun sank below the horizon, and the Desert King watched it go with the patience of a man who knew, with absolute, bone-deep, sand-grained certainty, that the sun would rise tomorrow on a world that belonged to him. It always would.
That's the story. Raw, ruthless, and straight up insane. If you felt that chaos, hit subscribe right now, because it only gets crazier from here. Drop a comment, tell me what shocked you most. And remember, this world doesn't reward the weak. See you in the next one.